Hello and a very good morning. It's 7 a.m. and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I am Kamali. Thank you for starting your day with us. This is how things are looking.
A serving prison governor tells us the public is being put at risk with more inmates being sent to minimal security prisons.
There are a large number of prisoners in open prisons now that we would not have considered suitable 2 or 3 years ago.
Meanwhile, the Justice Secretary David Lammy is facing questions with the manhunt for a mistakenly released foreign sex offender ongoing.
Elon Musk is on track for a $1 trillion pay packet with Tesla, but with some pretty hefty targets attached.
Well, no spoilers for now, but soon we'll be speaking to the Traitors finalist David Olusoga after that nail-biting finale.
Which we haven't seen yet. Also, we sit down with Jennifer Lawrence after her return to film, talking about how motherhood has changed her and the way people see her. Hello, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us here today. A serving prison governor has told us the British public is being put at risk with more inmates being moved to minimal security prisons. Overcrowding in higher security jails has led to policy changes which mean more prisoners are eligible for a transfer to what's called open conditions earlier on their sentence.
Yeah, it'll be an embarrassing admission for the government, which is currently dealing with that manhunt of a mistakenly released foreign sex offender. Well, our correspondent, Molly Malone, has the story and a warning. Molly's report includes a woman's story of being violently attacked by someone who's now being moved to one of these open prisons.
It's only by some miracle, because they can't explain how I'm alive. They literally said he hit all my major organs when he stabbed me, so I should be dead. So should my little one.
Natalie was 8 months pregnant when she was stabbed 24 times by her ex-partner. He was sentenced to 18 years for attempted murder, but is now due to be transferred to an open prison, 4 years earlier than planned, as part of changes to the security categorisation of inmates.
Any day now, my ex, who created this untold horror, is about to go into an open prison. And that's at 9.5 years, and it just doesn't feel right. It's terrifying, and it doesn't also feel like justice, if I'm honest.
How does it make you feel, given what you've gone through?
Hurt, angry, let down. It's bad enough the sentence was lower than we expected. So it's like a double whammy.
Natalie is not alone, as policy changes mean more offenders are being transferred to lower security jails.
Open prisons like this one in Sussex are by definition open with minimal security. Inmates are free to cross public roads. They're free to go out on day release, and traditionally prisoners would come to an open prison right at the end of their sentence in preparation for life outside. But with overcrowding in higher security jails, we're seeing more and more offenders transferred to prisons like this earlier in their sentence.
And there are warnings that these policy changes are not without risk. This is a serving prison governor. He's speaking to us on behalf of the Prison Governors Association.
There are a large number of prisoners in open prisons now that we would not have considered suitable 2 or 3 years ago.
Do you feel that public safety is at risk with these changes?
It has to be. There has to be a level of public safety that's at risk when you're taking prisoners into an open prison with limited physical barriers who maybe shouldn't be there, and then who are able to walk out, who are able to leave at any point. So there has to be a increased risk for the public.
Here's an example. Look at this appeal from Sussex Police. This is Ola Abimola, a foreign national offender who was serving a 21-year sentence for kidnap and GBH. He absconded from an open prison weeks ago and hasn't returned. The police say they're working to find him.
Do you feel safe?
No, is the honest answer. When I had the news that he had been approved for open prison, it just absolutely knocked me for 6.
Against the odds, both Natalie and her young child survived the attack. She says she understands the problems prisons face, but her priority is feeling safe.
Well, Molly is here with us now. Hi there, Molly. And we've been talking a lot this week about the wrongful release of prisoners, haven't we? But this latest warning raises different issues, doesn't it?
Yeah, different issues, but look, people will look at this, right, and think public safety is at risk is what they're hearing. And I think what we've seen this week has been a really visual reminder of some of the problems. Releases in error, essentially. They happen a lot. We had 262 in the last year, but Hadish Kabati, the Ethiopian asylum seeker that was mistakenly freed a couple of weeks ago now, well, his case really brought to the fore the issues. New checks were brought in, but still we're seeing 2 people that were mistakenly freed in the last 10 days or so. One of them, an Algerian national, is still on the run. The government facing plenty of questions about what's going on. But as you say, the story today is similar but slightly different, because while those are releases, terribly visual, symbolic reminder of problems, actually what we're talking about today is purposeful policy changes. So because of overcrowding in open prisons, they're transferring more and more people, sometimes more serious criminals, much earlier in their sentence to these open prisons. Some people will be familiar with open prisons, but you saw in my report, I tried to sort of illustrate the fact that people can walk from place to place, they can go out on day release. That's what they're entitled to do, because the idea is that you're trying to sort of rehabilitate people, prepare them for reintegration back into society. But that governor, in my report, it's very rare for them to speak out. I should say he was doing so in the capacity with the trade union. But he's obviously really worried about what's going on. It's these people, it's the staff that have to manage it. Many of the staff, they point out that they feel, scapegoated when things go wrong, and they're issuing warnings that the right people aren't being transferred to these open prisons. The government say that a risk assessment is in place. Well, actually, the governor that I spoke to was saying that often they're kind of an algorithm tick box. We have had a response from the government. They said the small number of offenders eligible for moves to open prison face a strict, thorough risk assessment, and anyone found breaching the rules can be immediately returned to a closed prison. We're keeping the most dangerous offenders off the streets by expanding prison capacity with 14,000 new places by 2031 and introducing sentencing reforms to force prisoners to earn their way to release or face longer in jail for bad behaviour. So there's lots of change going on, lots of problems. Clearly, they want to make it clear that they're trying to deal with it, but the reality is that it's very immediate and visual problems that are happening right now.
Absolutely, Molly, really interesting, thank you. And it is so interesting, as Molly was saying there, Kamali, that we've talked a lot this week about prisoners being mistakenly released. Now we've got this warning about the risk of people absconding when they're sent to open prisons as well. And I think, the debate has got quite kind of focused on outdated systems, failed bureaucracy this week. And this is a real reminder, isn't it, that there are victims here, and there's the public that might be a bit concerned about their own safety.
I'm glad you mentioned that word victims, because in Molly's report we heard from Natalie, didn't we? And she sort of lays bare exactly the concern about this, because it's not as if these individuals who are being released are completely able to walk around freely as they are at this point. These are people who have been sent to prison for reasons, for long offences. I mean, the one on the run at the moment is sex offenders on the sex offenders register. And the police, of course, and the Justice Department, Justice system will be hoping that they can apprehend them as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. The Justice Secretary are under a lot of pressure. We'll be talking to the government shortly and we'll raise some of these issues with him. Now then, we're going to be spoiler-free.
We are. We're not going to
Not
talk
least
about
because Kamali hasn't watched any of the series yet.
Try not to.
We can't not talk about last night's final, though, of the final episode of The Traitors.
Now, as finales go, it was incredibly nail-biting, I'm told. A star-studded showdown with Alan Carr, Joe Marler, David Olasoga, Kat Burns and Nick Mohammed. Now, look, the point is, I am trying to save this Celebrity Traitors for Christmas to watch it with the family, but I don't know how I am intending to do that. It's only November. I've got a month and a bit left.
You must already know pretty much who the finalists are, don't you?
I have to read the newspapers, of course, and yes, I've seen, and I know the result. I mean, it's a magnificent show, and I'm very pleased to say we're going to be speaking to one of those finalists later, aren't we?
We are. We've got David Olasoga coming on the show a little bit later. There may be spoilers when we get to that interview, but none before that, we can assure you.
As careful as we possibly can be. All right. Now, Elon Musk is on course for a $1 trillion pay packet after the board of Tesla approved his deal. Now, although there are some ambitious targets attached, it does mean that Mr. Musk is already the world's richest man and could become the world's first trillionaire.
Yeah, doesn't sound bad, does it? Let's bring in Sadia on this. I mean, $1 trillion, it is a huge amount of money, but there are conditions.
Yes, of course. So it's not like Elon Musk is just going to turn up to work and then get $1 trillion and become a trillionaire overnight. There are caveats, there are performance targets and benchmarks that he has to meet, and this is over the next 10 years. Right. So essentially it's tying him into the company for 10 years, because I think the shareholders realise what happens when Elon Musk is distracted and his focus is shifted from Tesla. So here are some of the benchmarks that he has to meet, and again I say this is over the next 10 years. He has to sell 20 million vehicles, 10 million active full self-driving subscriptions. That's where there is completely self-driving cars, 1 million robo-taxis and 1 million humanoid robots. And by the way, none of these robots have even been ordered yet or have gone on sale. And the robo-taxi prototypes are still being driven with people inside them right now for safety. So there is a long way to go for Tesla, but it's also a company that's not doing very well. As you might have seen, sales and revenues have dropped for Tesla cars. Many people you might have seen were boycotting Tesla at the start of the year. It also faces potential billions of dollars in lost revenue because of the US government's reduction in support for electric vehicles. So it is a bit of a steep uphill climb for him, and this was his reaction to the biggest pay package in corporate history. Elon Musk said, "I super appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. What we're about to embark upon is not merely a new chapter on the future of Tesla, but a whole new book." But for $1 trillion, you'd hope that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I wonder how big the book is going to be. Sadia, thank you so much for that. And look, as Sadia says there, Tesla hasn't been doing great. You've got to remember, this is a company that was founded by Elon Musk that really didn't advertise at all. It was just sort of word of mouth. That's how people got to know it. And it became quite a behemoth for him. It's making him lots of money. Now they've tied him in. He's lost the distraction of working in the White House.
Yeah, that's true.
So will he now be able to focus on this? But remember, he's got those rockets that he needs to get people to the moon and to Mars with.
He's a busy man.
He is a very busy man. $1 trillion will focus the mind, I'm sure.
I think you're absolutely right. Now, Donald Trump built his political brand on economic strength, promising to make America rich again. But 1 year on from his election victory, the key word to emerge is affordability.
Well, as the longest government shutdown in the US continues, polls are showing that Trump's popularity is slipping. Well, it's something our US correspondent Mark Stone has been looking into. He sent us a little bit of his report.
Pennsylvania, remember, was key to propelling Trump back to the White House. In this swing state, they swung to his promises. Factories reopened and life more affordable. Here, though, it really isn't. Up the road, conversations outside the town's subsidized homes.
How much help do the people in this community need, do you think?
How much help?
How much help do they need?
As much as they can get. I mean, help is a four-letter word, but it has a big meaning. So help.
Do you get the sense people are needing more help now than they did a year ago?
Yes, sir. I believe they needed it then, and they need that much more now. You know, it's not hard to figure that out. The cost of living is high.
It's getting harder, and I'm a hard-working woman. You know, I don't get no food stamps. I don't, get none of that. You got to take care of them bills, or eat a little bit, or don't have the lights on. And then you have people like Mr. Melvin, who's been out here for years, serving the community.
Mr. Melvin runs the local food bank, and inside, a moment unfolds that cuts to the heart of the need here.
What's wrong?
I don't know. I'm so grateful. Like, this is crazy, all this.
Oh, God. What's wrong, man?
All this situation with the government is so crazy. Like, I'm not the only one who's suffering right now. I know there's a lot of older people that don't have family. And, like, for you to do all this is a blessing.
Isaiah 6:9 says, "Unto us a child was born, and a son shall be given.
Amen.
And the government shall be upon his shoulders." Not Trump's, not the Senate, not the House of Representatives, but his shoulders.
Geraldine is the face of 40 million Americans.
God bless you. So let's get you some stuff.
Okay.
Now not receiving the full nutritional assistance program usually provided by the federal government because it remains shut down.
And look, as Mark was saying there, it does remain shut down, no end in sight for that government shutdown, the longest now in history. And Donald Trump will be concerned after the elections this week of the new mayor of New York City, as well as governors in Virginia and New Jersey. Donald Trump, with a meeting with Republicans, said that something has to give now, something has to change. He realises that his popularity is under threat. I mean, his approval ratings are down 18%, 39% approve, 58% disapprove. I mean, American presidents are never that popular in the country a year in, but Trump will be looking at this and looking at the fact that the government is still shut down and wondering what needs to change now to try and get some support back from his base.
And also it's going to be fascinating to see how he handles that new New York mayor as well. Really interested to see how he
there is going to be a battle.
Tackles all of that. There is going to be a battle. Let's move on, though, because Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has pressed charges against a drunk man who groped her on the street.
Yeah, the president described what happened as an assault on all women while calling on states in Mexico to make it easier for victims to report the assault. We're not going to play the video of the assault because it is, I mean, shocking.
It is really shocking, and we don't want to show such a graphic assault of somebody. But it has raised all sorts of conversations. I mean, she as well has said that she will press charges. She says she's doing it not just for herself, but on behalf of all women, because she has been pretty keen to highlight the issue of misogyny in her own country, but also the issue of violence against women, because it really is quite a serious issue there. It
definitely is a serious issue in Mexico. As the first female president of the country, Claudia Sheinbaum hopes to be turning a chapter in Mexico, not just in politics, but in the culture of the country, as well. As Anna says, violence against women there is really high. Femicide rates in Mexico are really high. So for the president to be out on the streets and for this to happen to her is shocking.
It really is. It's so shocking. I mean, to give you some figures, femicide, a staggering 98% of the gender-based murders are estimated to go unpunished, which is just a really shocking figure, isn't it? So we'll see where that case goes.
We will. All right, now, if you are headed out, don't forget, you can take us with you for your early morning news hit. We got to do this morning, didn't we, Anna?
We did.
The cheat sheet. It was a lot of fun. It was. How did it go for you?
Loved it, Kamali.
Brilliant. It was the best cheat sheet you're going to hear this week. Right, scan the QR code you can see on screen and you can have a listen to it.
Yeah, it's basically your mini crib sheet, arms you with all you need to know for the day ahead, so do check that out.
Absolutely. All right.
After the break, we're going to be talking to Steve Reed, the Housing Minister. Lots of questions for him, not least around all the latest development regarding prisons, so stay with us. Now, the Justice Secretary may have breathed a bit of a sigh of relief yesterday when he saw William Smith, the prisoner wrongly released from Wandsworth Prison on Monday, voluntarily go back to prison. But the Algerian sex offender released the week before has still not been found, and the Justice Secretary has been accused of not giving clarity on the whole situation. So lots to talk about with the Minister this morning. Minister for Housing, Steve Reid, is here with me. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. And I will kick off with the issue of prisons, if I may, because luckily for you, William Smith voluntarily went back to Wandsworth Prison. But in the meantime, the Algerian illegal migrant sex offender who was wrongly released from Wandsworth last week appears to still be at large. Have you got any news on progress in finding him?
I'm afraid not, and I know that the police are doing everything they can to make sure that he's found and taken back to where he should be. But just to start off, I share the frustration, the fury of everybody at the fact that we're seeing accidental releases of prisoners, and it's been going on for years. And
but it's got worse recently.
Well, the previous government, 800 accidental releases. It's continuing to happen because we have, in that very complex big prison system, a paper-based process for identifying which individual should be released and which shouldn't. And it keeps going wrong because you get human error. The solution to it is to invest in digital systems so it's easier to keep tabs on, keep track of the background and circumstances of each individual offender. But the previous government didn't invest in it. We are investing in that system. It will take time to bring it in. But if you look at the state of the criminal justice system that we inherited, they'd cut the police, probation service was broken down. We'd literally run out of prison places, which is why Rishi Sunak called the election early, because he didn't want to have to take the decisions he knew were inevitable because they hadn't built the prison places. We take responsibility for getting on and fixing this broken system, but we are seeing the manifestations of that breakdown.
OK, but I want to focus on what the government's doing now. And the Justice Secretary has caused more confusion, hasn't he, around his announcements on this issue this week. He refused to answer questions at PMQs on Wednesday. He then didn't come back to the House to clarify things when he did have more information. And his latest statement also raised questions. I want to pick into that, if I can, a little bit, because he said yesterday that the release of this Algerian sex offender happened before he introduced tough new checks on the release of prisoners. But just to go into the detail, that statement about the new checks was on the 27th of October, and this man, Kader Sharif, was released on the 29th. So did he get that wrong?
Well, the dates of this, that or the other...
Well, no, it's important, because he said this release happened before he introduced the new checks.
What's important is there have been hundreds of individuals released who should not have been released because we've got a paper-based system that you can't guarantee is getting it right every time. And I'm sure everyone watching this, just like me, just like you, wants the prison system to get this right every time. I don't want anyone that should be in jail accidentally released. And we get that right by fixing the problems that led to it. Now, David called together yesterday, he called in the prison governors. That's the right thing to do. I imagine that there was some hauling over the coals for what has been going on. But he also wanted to hear from them that they are using this new, more robust checking system, still on the paper-based system that we've inherited. But he'll also have wanted to hear from them what more support they need to make sure they get it right.
Well, give us an idea about what these new checks do involve. David Lammy called them the strongest release checks that have ever been put in place. But what do they involve if they can't stop an offender being released early after they've been accused? What they can do is minimise the risk.
And there's double and triple sign-off of certain decisions, and that's the right thing to do. But if you really want to know you've got accurate information for every offender, you need a digital system. We don't have a digital system because the previous government didn't invest in it. We are investing in it. It doesn't happen overnight, just like the new prison places don't happen overnight. But you all know they only built, the previous government, 500 places in 14 years. We've already built 2,500 in 15 months. So we are putting the investment in. You will start to see this broken criminal justice system start to work properly again. Unfortunately, while we're still doing the repair job, you are going to see cracks.
You talk about the cost of putting in this digital system. How much will it be then? You say it'll take time. How long will it take?
We're investing over £2 billion in upgrading the prison system, building the new places, putting the digital systems in place. You've got to repair the probation system. We've got to recruit more police after the previous government came in and sacked 20,000 of them. If you remember, you couldn't get in front of a judge because the courts were full up, even for very serious offending like sexual assault and rape. People were not getting into court because of that. We have to fix a broken system. You can't do it overnight, but we will take every step we can to make this system as robust as possible while we put in the investment to repair it completely.
There are claims that the government's early release scheme is behind many of these mistaken releases. Is that the case?
But the early release scheme isn't something the government would have wished to do. It's that the prisons were full up. And if you had the courts taking somebody who has committed a serious offence, sentencing them to custodial, and there's nowhere to put them,
so you think
what do you do?
You think it's worth doing, but do you think it might be the cause of some of these mistaken early releases?
The reason Rishi Sunak called the general election early was because he didn't want to be in 10 Downing Street when it became clear to the public over that summer that they'd run out of prison places. So we're getting to work and we're fixing that problem. The reason that there are people being released by accident is because we've got a paper-based system that means that you can't properly track all the information you need taking decisions about individual offenders, prisoners, and where those individuals are located. We're putting the investment in. We will have that digital system.
And the Justice Secretary has talked about these stringent new checks to prevent mistaken early releases. Have any more prisoners been released in error since he introduced those checks?
I don't have the information to be able to answer that, but for as long as we've got a system that is paper-based and is broken, it is likely there will be mistakes. It's why we're investing to put things right again.
I want to ask you quickly about comments made by your new deputy leader of the party, who has said that Rachel Reeves needs to follow through on her manifesto promises around tax, not to raise income tax, VAT or national insurance. She says it's because it's important not to breach trust in politics. Do you agree with her?
Well, you'll know no member of the government can comment on the budget in the days ahead of the budget coming through, but absolutely on the manifesto, we are getting on to deliver it. The reason there's been investment in the NHS to provide 5 million additional appointments, which is what we've done, to cut waiting lists, is because that was a key promise in our manifesto. The reason that we've increased the national minimum wage is to give millions of our lowest paid workers in this country a pay rise. That was in the manifesto. The reason that we introduced a ban on the multi-million-pound bonuses the water bosses were paying themselves for overseeing record levels of pollution in our water is because it was in the manifesto. We will get on and we will deliver that manifesto over the course of this Parliament.
OK, and finally, Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, has been found to have broken the governance code on public appointments when she appointed a donor as a chair of the new football watchdog. Yeah. I mean, you came in as a government promising accountability. This is not a good look, is it?
And she's apologised for what happened. But to be fair to Lisa, she didn't know that he was a donor at the time she appointed him. And as soon as she found out, she took the appropriate action. And the independent investigator has confirmed that. You don't have to take my word for it.
OK, well, Steve Reeve, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
I think it was good to hear from Steve Reed there. I think we're still defending that position. I'm not sure at which point this government have to start taking responsibility for some of the mistakes that are happening under their watch, rather than blaming the previous lot for it.
Yeah, certainly the defence of the government is we inherited a broken justice system and prison system because of the overcrowding and all the problems with the bureaucracy. But as you say, some questions at David Lammy's door as well, just in the last week, given these mistaken releases and coming in after he's announced that these very tough checks. So still questions there.
It is. Actually interesting in that question that you said, has anyone else been released mistakenly in this time that's elapsed? He didn't have the information, which you wouldn't expect Steve Reed to have. But that's the risk, isn't it? That this is happening as we speak.
Exactly. And indeed.
Something else. Now, Jennifer Lawrence, the actor, has spoken to Sky News about her new movie, which is called Die My Love. It's out in cinemas today.
Yeah, and the film, which also stars Robert Pattinson, tells the story of a young mother slowly losing her mind after the birth of her child.
Now, Jennifer was actually 5 months pregnant during the filming. Here she is talking about it.
First, you become a mother, which is an entirely different identity, the most important identity that you'll ever experience. And there's the death of your old life, but there's also a new fear that has never existed before. It's like paralyzing, and the love and the fear and everything grows and it's deeper. And I think we both relate to an artist being stuck is kind of like a death, because that's how you process your life and that's how you process the world. And if she's not able to connect that part back to her, then, you know, like Lynn says, she feels like she's vanishing. I always try to make a point of not talking about my kids, but I've made a movie about postpartum, so I can't really not. I mean, I've tried to just talk about my experience becoming a mother, and less, you know, about them specifically. But yeah, you know, I can't make a movie about postpartum and then be like, well, I'm not going to talk about that. So that, but I feel like we bared it all in the film, so it doesn't feel like as violating.
Yeah. It's really interesting, this. I'm fascinated that she was 5 months pregnant when she was playing a character that he was having such a tough time after giving birth. That must have been quite challenging for her.
And really brave and sort of revealing of her in that interview to talk about the challenge that she goes through. It's a challenge that billions of women all over the world will be facing.
Yeah,
and it's something that needs to be discussed, I think, more openly.
A Hollywood actress as well, who must be conscious that, you know, as lots of women are, that they worry about their, you know, getting hired if they've got other responsibilities. I mean, it's interesting that she will talk about that, and at the same time wanting to protect the privacy of her children when you're so out in the public realm, you're so exposed.
Yeah, and as a Hollywood actor as well, perfection is really what Jennifer Lawrence is all about, and to have this sort of deeply personal story about, you know, in the movie and about her as well, it's courageous of her, and I hope it encourages people to talk about it, so we can try and help people who are suffering from it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Open is absolutely right.
All right, let's move on to some of the day's other news now, and it's about the Metropolitan Police. A new report has revealed that anti-black racism is baked into the force. That is the main warning from what is a landmark review, which has found that the Met's culture makes racial harm inevitable.
Well, we're joined now by former Scotland Yard Superintendent Nusrit Mehtab. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I wonder, first of all, just what your initial reaction is to this latest report by Shireen Daniels. It's concluded that discrimination is baked into the Met's HR systems, and that its systems, leadership, governance and culture are producing racial harm. What do you make of that?
Well, what she's saying is not new. It's something that's been said over and over again. But again, another damning review, and it has serious implications for Black Londoners, because their whole policing experience is based on a system that's there that does racial harm to them, that discriminates against them. And it has some serious implications for the Metropolitan Police Service as well, because it says the leadership of the Met defends, they deny. So it's now time for real change. And, there's been a mountain of reviews from Scarman down to Casey, Angelini, there's scandal after scandal. The response now needs to be different. So we need to think about, the Met needs to think about how they're actually going to change.
Nusrit, morning to you. Thanks for joining us. You talk about leadership, you talk about change. We know that the head of the Met, Sir Mark Rowley, when the Casey review came out, did not want to talk about the institutional racism. He said there were systemic challenges, but didn't want to go that far. I mean, when the microphone's put in front of him today, if it is, should he say and should he agree with this review?
Well, yes, absolutely, because you can't move forward unless you acknowledge it. You have to diagnose the problem. And one of the first things I think Mark Rowley should do is accept the view. I mean, I know he said it's powerful and we need change, but he needs to accept institutional racism. He needs to explicitly list where the anti-blackness is within the system. And then they need to set up an independent transformation board that is co-chaired by local community and racial equality experts. Because, we can't have this again. The whole thing about these 30 patterns of harm that the author describes are embedded into the system. And one of the things that she explains is that they're allowed to be perpetuated. They're allowed to continue because of this refusal to actually admit and do something about it. And now is not the time to actually, put out great comms, as we know the Met does, and try to firefight it and think, okay, let's get through this challenge. Because this, it's very explicit what's been said, and it's 40 years of, all the research that's taken place, all the previous reviews that have built on it. But this review is different because it doesn't make recommendations. It doesn't give the Met an implementation plan or deadlines. And the Met, we know that like deliverables, they like to have an action plan and an implementation plan, which isn't there. So what they're going to have to do is really start to think about in the organisation, in the institution, where this, harm, this anti-blackness harm, this discrimination lies, unpick it, and then move forward.
Mark Rowley has said that trust among black Londoners in the Met has gone up. That's his claim in the light of this report. You've laid out some of the things that you would like to see, Nusrit, but I wonder if we can just stay with the leadership and the acknowledgement. What's your sense as to why he is so reluctant to acknowledge what we heard in the Macpherson report, what we heard in the Casey review, what we heard in Angelini, as you mentioned, now we hear in Shireen Daniels' review? Why is he so reluctant to use those words about institutional racism within this force?
Well, it comes back to the very fact that leadership have spent many, many years just with the same thought process of denying, defending, and not actually admitting it. And I think, it's like, I think at the Casey review, Mark Rowley had actually said, well, it's a matter of interpretation. And I think that's what he doesn't want to admit, because then he feels that he will get, morale will change in the organisation, because the perception of officers is that, maybe that every single officer is a racist. Now, that's not true, and it's been proven over and over again. This is about how the internal mechanisms of the force work. This is not saying that every single officer is racist. If we're back there, if we're back to step one of, we can't say it because it'll affect morale, or it's saying every single officer is racist, then we don't move on. It's about explaining. It's about saying, yes, it is institutional racism, because this review, internal review, actually lays out what the issues and problems are and how the system in itself is acting against minorities. And it's not, it focuses on anti-blackness, but this is wider because there's also other underrepresented groups. This isn't just about the Met, although the review focuses on Met. This has implications for policing nationally. So I think his reluctance is exactly what the review, this review, Casey review, and every other review is warned against senior managers to do. And he seems to be falling into the same trap. So my advice, if Mark Rowley is listening, is start to admit institutional racism, list explicitly where this anti-black, racial harm exists within the organisation, and move forward. We cannot carry on like this. Policing cannot carry on like this. If trust and confidence has gone up in the last 2 years by 10%, the Panorama programme that we've just recently had has broken trust and confidence, and now this. So, be brave and admit institutional racism. Only a few words, what they mean.
Nusrit, sorry to break in there. I just want to get, briefly, if you can, your thoughts on how they tackle it. Because when you hear this conclusion that discrimination is baked in, it feels quite difficult to root it out, doesn't it? It's a big task. How would you suggest they go about it?
Well, is it a big task? Because if you know where the problem is, for example, in promotion, you know that black candidates will be discriminated against. They won't be ready. There's certain thought processes that go into it. And it's, and the same thing kind of happened to me, and it's listed in my book, Off the Beat. It explains exactly how those things happen. And it's about tackling that. It's about asking managers, holding them accountable to see what they do. And, in the report, there's institutional prompts that ask yourself the question, start to unpick things, start to think about, okay, what has harmed, what has caused racial harm? So, for example, in promotion, how is it that we treat black candidates? If you look at misconduct, why are of black officers, 81% more likely to receive a sanction, even though the complaint isn't substantiated. So all those things need unpicking. And it's about taking each structure, which has been named, there's 30 different patterns of harm, take each thing slowly and unpick it, dismantle it, and see how you can change it. And I think that's the way forward, to reassure the officers. And, you know, we shouldn't have to be reassuring officers that actually what institutional racism means. They should now have this definition. We had it in Casey, we've had it since Macpherson, and it's quite clear there is no ambiguity. And I think it takes good leadership. But also one thing I will add is that with leadership, they have to be held accountable. And the accountability comes in that there should be some form of, if you like, scale where if they don't eliminate racial harm, discrimination, exclusion in many of those systems, that will be pay related and that will affect their pay. Because when it comes to pay, it really does focus the mind.
Indeed. Well, Nusrit Mehtab, really interesting to get your thoughts and your reaction this morning. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, a line of breaking news to bring you. It kind of concerns us, doesn't it, Anna? There have been reports now of early-stage talks that ITV are in talks with Sky, the owner, of course, of Sky News, over the possible sale of its media and entertainment division in a deal that's said to be worth £1.6 billion. It's coming from ITV. Sky have declined to comment on this particular story. But we have a little bit more detail, don't we, Anna, on what may well be happening. The Sky said they're engaging with ITV, trying to explore opportunities to create a UK commercial streaming champion.
Yeah, an opportunity to create a streaming champion of genuine scale, bringing the two entities together. And just to give you some of the stats, ITV has 40 million registered users and 16.4 million monthly active users.
Yes, it's a fascinating story about the media business consolidation. We've heard these kind of stories before. Of course, we'll keep a very close eye on this for reasons I'm sure you can imagine as to exactly how this deal plays out in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, we'll bring you any updates. But for now, though, we're going to turn to a story that we touched on with the Minister, Steve Reid, a little bit earlier on, that Lisa Nandy has apologised for breaching the code on public appointments.
Yeah, the Culture Secretary says that she unknowingly broke the rules in her pick for the chair of the new independent football regulator. Well, our political correspondent Amanda Akas is here with us. Morning to you, Amanda. So we heard Steve Reid's defence. Why don't you just lay out exactly how we reached this point and why Lisa Nandy had to say those words?
Yeah, so this is the appointment of a man called David Cogan, who's an expert in broadcasting sports rights effectively, who's been appointed as chair of the new independent football regulator. This is an organisation that's been set up effectively to promote the rights of fans in football clubs, to prevent the big clubs from organising breakaway league, that kind of thing. And what the Commissioner for Standards and Public Appointments has found is that there have been a number of breaches in the way this appointment process was led by Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, because she failed to declare the fact that this man, David Cogan, had donated nearly £3,000 to her campaign to be leader of the Labour Party back in 2020. So not against Keir Starmer, but against Jeremy Corbyn then. And also that she had, the Labour Party in general had failed to declare the fact that he was a big Labour donor. He declared he donated some £33,000 to the party previously. Now, the Commissioner found that this was done unknowingly and that Lisa Nandy had acted in good faith, that she hadn't realised that these donations had happened at the time. But they say it not only should have been declared, it also should have been something that was discussed in his interview when he was first hired. The Tories are incredibly critical. They say it bears all the hallmarks of Labour cronyism. They say the appointment should be withdrawn immediately. He says, well, he didn't do anything wrong and now he wants to get on with the job that he was hired to do. But I think it's certainly uncomfortable reading for the government, even though she was found to have been acting in good faith.
Yeah, and has now apologised.
Absolutely.
She has. And Steve Reid said she didn't know that the money had been donated. We'll see if that stays the position for them. Amanda, thank you so much for that.
Now then, we're going to talk a little bit about Lioness Mary Earps. You might have
Yes,
seen her
Mary,
in the
Queen of
news.
Stops, yes.
She's got her autobiography out. Fascinating revelations in there. And Jackie Beltrao has sat down with her. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment.
Stay with us.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, who was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello there and welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. As you can see,
You're just learning the name.
I am, just remembering my own surname. My own surname. I know, it's been hard. It's taken me quite a long time to get used to it. I'm pleased to say we're joined by Beltrao, Jackie Beltrao. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, guys. How's
Hello,
it going?
hello. Yeah, very good. And so looking forward to talking to you this morning because you've done an interview with the woman of the moment, Mary Earps, Queen of Stops.
Along with a lot of other people. We did this a few days ago. It was embargoed, which is why we're not allowed to run it beforehand. And my goodness, I do not understand the pile-on that has happened since she did these interviews. I mean, it's been almost like she's become public enemy number one. And well, it's extraordinary. She's written a book. Everyone's gone on to the Hannah Hampton thing. You know, she's criticised Hannah Hampton. It's a really fleeting part of the book. It's not like chapters. It's a really, really tiny part. And at the end of the day, her autobiography, her memoir, her experiences of what happened, and everyone's saying, well, it's Mary Earps, me. Well, yeah.
Because it's her book.
It's her book. It's her story. And it is going to be from her perspective.
Jackie, is it...
Just wanted to say that.
So there was, it's a double-page spread in one of the papers today. I'm fascinated by, as you say, the pile. And I wonder, as you mentioned in our Cheat Sheet podcast, Anna, if it's because the Lionesses are on a pedestal as a team, as a unit, as a group of players that we think the very best of for good reasons, because they're champions.
It's very shiny, isn't it?
Right.
And it's very perfect and it's really wholesome. And the thought that everything could not be all perfect behind the scenes is a little bit hard to stomach. Also, the fact that Hannah Hampton came in as the number one, did so well, won the Euros again, you know, stopped so many shots, and the fact that Mary wasn't there and they kind of got along with things without her. But, you know, when it went back to just before that Euros, 5 weeks before, Mary Earps decided to call time on her international career. And I think many people thought, you've left us in the lurch because you're bitter, because you haven't got the number one shirt anymore. And she explained to me, and you're going to hear now in a second, it wasn't about that. It was about how she was treated in the whole year up to the run-up. I mean, this isn't a junior keeper that's just come in and is fighting for the number one shirt. She's
First choice.
got to a World Cup final. She'd won a Euros. Yeah. She was the number one. So to be sort of cold-shouldered in a way, without explanation, she found quite hard to deal with.
It was, 12 months of plus of a lot of different conversations, backwards and forwards, agonising over the decision. There was different dynamics at play. But I think it just, whatever I was considering, agonising over, it all came down to the same decision. That, to me, it seemed like the best thing to do was to, remove myself from the situation. And I think the way that it played out was how it was meant to. I think, the girls went on, had a fantastic tournament and won. And I was able to, take care of myself physically and mentally and move into my next chapter.
Did you feel like you were being sidelined, or did you feel like you were just going a bit mad?
Yeah, it was definitely maddening in the sense that that sort of situation can play merry hell with, like your mental health and the way you feel about yourself. And you start questioning everything. What have I done? What have I done wrong? What can I do better? And those were also the questions I was asking because I was desperately trying to get clarity. I always find when I have clarity, I can then proactively move forwards. I can work towards something. But it was definitely affecting the way I felt about myself. My self-worth in a way. And football can be a hard industry in that sense because you're at the peril of somebody else's opinion.
What's your relationship with Sarina Wiegman like now? Because you were so close to her. She gave you such belief.
Yeah, I will always have a tremendous amount of respect for Sarina. I did when we started working together, and I do now. I think she's a fantastic coach, and she's just won her 3rd consecutive European Championship. For me, that sums it up. And I think that, hopefully we'll have a conversation in the future and kind of after everything's settled down and time's passed where we can just kind of draw a line under everything. But, when we last spoke, I saw her at Ballon d'Or, and then I saw her at St George's Park when I, spoke with the girls before the announcement went public. And, we both acknowledged that, we had a difference of opinion and a difference of perspective on certain things, and we weren't quite seeing things the same way. But that doesn't take away from the memories we've shared and, the respect that's there, certainly from my side.
Yeah, well, a little mention there at the end of that clip, and the longer interview's available, isn't it, of her relationship with Sarina Wiegman. It's completely normal for football players to end up falling out with their bosses at certain times. That happens. Yeah. The boss is the one in the picture.
I think also, they were very close. They had a really close working relationship when Mary was number one goalkeeper, and then it suddenly changed. She felt it change. She felt it change. Now, whether Sarina felt it change, that's obviously Sarina's side of the story, but she felt that the relationship had really almost changed overnight. And the talk about you're rewarding bad behaviour by bringing back Hannah, because Hannah had been dropped from the squad. And
was it for bad behaviour?
Well, they never say what it was for. It's never ever mentioned what it was for, but Mary says it's because she was disruptive. But there's no detail.
No.
You'd have to be in that squad to know exactly what happened. But she is obviously very respectful of Sarina, and they did have a great relationship. They just didn't agree on this. And obviously Sarina's the coach. She gets to decide who is my number one goalkeeper. And, in the end, it wasn't going to be Mary.
Yeah, sometimes you fall out of favour.
So it's difficult for a player who has been top dog to deal with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. They're competitive people.
And you have, and they also
Yeah.
back themselves to be the
exactly.
best. They always do.
Lots more of your interview coming up later in the programme and online, of course. But right now, I just want to ask you about last night, because there was a big build-up to this match between Maccabi Tel Aviv and Aston Villa in the Europa League last night.
Yeah.
Maccabi fans were banned, weren't they? They ended up deciding not to send any anyway. But what happened?
Well, massive police presence. I mean, huge, police forces from all over the country coming together for 700 police to stand outside Villa Park and just, police these protests that happened. So there were lots of different pro-Palestinian groups there protesting. There was also counter-protests from pro-Israeli groups, which was quite a lot smaller, trying to keep them apart. 6 arrests were made, and it just really overshadowed this match. Many of the protesters feeling the match should not have taken place at all, and that Israeli teams shouldn't even be allowed to play in the Europa League. And in the end, on the pitch, Villa laboured to a 2-0 victory in that match. But it was very much kind of like a sideline, really, to everything else that went on around it.
And in the hours leading up to the game as well, the commander of Westminster Police said that there's significant levels of hooliganism within the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans was the reason for the ban. So we've got a little bit more clarity about that.
Yeah,
Jackie,
certain sections of fans, didn't he?
You did,
yeah.
The ultras, yes.
Thank you so much for now. There's plenty more to come in the next hour of Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. We did our cheat sheet podcast this morning.
We did.
It's
a lot of fun
classic of the genre, yes. So if you have the chance, you scan that QR code you see at the bottom of your screen and have a listen to it. It's only 10 minutes and it's well worth it. Get you up to speed for the rest of the day.
And all our top stories up next, so don't go anywhere.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 8 a.m. and this is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thank you for starting your day with us. This is how things are looking.
A serving prison governor tells us the public is being put at risk with more inmates being sent to minimal security prisons.
There are a large number of prisoners in open prisons now that we would not have considered suitable 2 or 3 years ago.
Meanwhile, the Justice Secretary David Lammy is facing more questions with the manhunt for that mistakenly released foreign sex offender still going on.
Elon Musk is on track for a $1 trillion pay packet with Tesla, but with some pretty hefty targets attached.
Well, we're going to have more of our sit-down interview with the former Lioness and winner of the Euros, Mary Earps.
And after the dramatic climax of Celebrity Traitors, we'll be speaking to finalist David Olusoga. Hello, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us here today. A serving prison governor from the Prison Governors Association has told us the British public is being put at risk, with more inmates being moved to minimal security prisons. Overcrowding in higher security jails has led to policy changes which mean that more prisoners are eligible for a transfer to what's called open conditions earlier on in their sentence.
Now, that will be an embarrassing admission for the government. Of course, they're currently dealing with that manhunt after a person was mistakenly released from Wandsworth Prison, just the latest. Our correspondent Molly Malone has a story and a warning. Molly's report includes the story of a woman being violently attacked by someone who has now moved to one of those open prisons.
It's only by some miracle, because they can't explain how I'm alive. They literally said he hit all my major organs when he stabbed me, so I should be dead. So should my little one.
Natalie was 8 months pregnant when she was stabbed 24 times by her ex-partner. He was sentenced to 18 years for attempted murder, but is now due to be transferred to an open prison, 4 years earlier than planned, as part of changes to the security categorisation of inmates.
Any day now, my ex, who created this untold horror, is about to go into an open prison. And that's at 9.5 years, and it just doesn't feel right. It's terrifying, and it doesn't also feel like justice, if I'm honest.
How does it make you feel, given what you've gone through?
Hurt, angry, let down. It's bad enough the sentence was lower than we expected, so it's like a double whammy.
Natalie is not alone, as policy changes mean more offenders are being transferred to lower security jails.
Open prisons like this one in Sussex are by definition open with minimal security. Inmates are free to cross public roads. They're free to go out on day release, and traditionally prisoners would come to an open prison right at the end of their sentence in preparation for life outside. But with overcrowding in higher security jails, we're seeing more and more offenders transferred to prisons like this earlier in their sentence.
And there are warnings that these policy changes are not without risk. This is a serving prison governor. He's speaking to us on behalf of the Prison Governors Association.
There are a large number of prisoners in open prisons now that we would not have considered suitable 2 or 3 years ago.
Do you feel that public safety is at risk with these changes?
It has to be. There has to be a level of public safety that's at risk when you're taking prisoners into an open prison with limited physical barriers who maybe shouldn't be there, and then who are able to walk out, who are able to leave at any point. So there has to be a increased risk for the public.
Here's an example. Look at this appeal from Sussex Police. This is Ola Abimola, a foreign national offender who was serving a 21-year sentence for kidnap and GBH. He absconded from an open prison weeks ago and hasn't returned. The police say they're working to find him.
Do you feel safe?
No, is the honest answer. When I had the news that he had been approved for open prison, it just absolutely knocked me for six.
Against the odds, both Natalie and her young child survived the attack. She says she understands the problems prisons face, but her priority is feeling safe.
Well, to say Molly is here with us now. Molly, morning to you. Great reporting, as always. I mean, the government have got themselves in a real mess here. They're blaming the previous government, but we can see the impact it's having in the real world.
Yeah, there were some changes made under the previous government, but it would be wrong to suggest that this government haven't made changes as well, because they've actually extended the policy, making it even easier for more people to be eligible for this open prison transfer. People will have seen this week news about releases and errors. They're mistakes. They've happened for a long time, but they are visually and symbolically terrible for the prison service because, bluntly, many people will think about prisons and they think about public safety, and this is the clear example that people will feel at risk. We've had news this week of two people that were mistakenly freed by the courts and by the prison service. One of them, an Algerian national, is still on the run. There are so many questions for the government, so many questions for the prison service. One of them is, how about these new checks that were brought into play after Hadish Kabati, the Ethiopian asylum seeker, an Epping sex offender, was mistakenly released at the end of October. That was the 24th of October. Come the 27th of October, we were told there are these new checks by more senior staff that have been brought in to try and prevent that from happening. Well, then on the 29th of October, we had an Algerian national who is still on the run. Now, you put this to the Housing Secretary, Steve Reed. I think we're going to play a little bit of what he had to say.
The Justice Secretary has caused more confusion, hasn't he, around his announcements on this issue this week. He refused to answer questions at PMQs on Wednesday. He then didn't come back to the House to clarify things when he did have more information. And his latest statement also raised questions. I want to pick into that, if I can, a little bit, because he said yesterday that the release of this Algerian sex offender happened before he introduced tough new checks on the release of prisoners. But just to go into the detail, that statement about the new checks was on the 27th of October, and this man, Kader Sharif, was released on the 29th. So did he get that wrong?
Well, you know, the dates of this, that or the other...
Well, no, it's important, because he said this release happened before he introduced the new checks.
What's important is there have been hundreds of individuals released who should not have been released, because we've got a paper-based system that you can't guarantee is getting it right every time. And I'm sure everyone watching this, just like me, just like you, wants the prison system to get this right every time. I don't want anyone that should be in jail accidentally released, and we get that right by fixing the problems that led to it.
So he's focusing on those wrongful releases, which a lot of the political debate has been about this week. But your report looks at slightly different issues, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the serving governor, speaking his capacity for the Prison Governors Association, is trying to warn about what they see as the next big problem, which is this idea of open prisons. It's been happening for a long time, but because of overcrowding in higher security jails, more and more, and actually much more serious offenders are being transferred to the open estate. They can go out on day release. They can, you know, it's basically to prepare them for life outside. But people, staff at prisons, and also victims. Remember, these are victims who have seen the absolute collapse of the justice system for many years now. You saw in my report a woman called Natalie stabbed 24 times by her ex-partner while she was carrying their unborn child. She's been told that he's due to be transferred to an open prison. So she's petrified, you know, for her safety, but also for the safety of her children. Now, the government say that there's a robust risk assessment in place. If these people don't fit, or if they need to be, they can be transferred back to open prisons. But clearly, staff are really worried about it. So lots of questions for the government, lots of questions for the prison service. They have told us that there is a small number of offenders eligible for moves to open prison who face a strict, thorough risk assessment, and anyone found breaching the rules can be immediately returned to a closed prison. They went on to say, we're keeping the most dangerous offenders off the streets by expanding prison capacity with 14,000 new places by 2031 and introducing sentencing reforms to force prisoners to earn their way to release or face longer in jail for bad behaviour. But look, people will be looking at that statement here, 2031, see what's happened this week, and we're thinking, look, this is quite an immediate problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Molly, thanks very much indeed. And Molly's so right to raise this issue of public safety, isn't she? Yeah. Because I think the debate has been a lot focused on failed bureaucracy, on outdated systems, when we've seen the paperwork and the fact that it is on paper and not digitalised.
Anyway.
A lot of the debate about these mistaken prison releases is focused on that. that. And I think Molly's report brings it back to sort of public fears about safety and the potential for people out on the streets who shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, the state has a responsibility to keep its citizens safe, and it will feel with these releases in error that the state aren't doing the job that they're meant to be doing. So definitely one to keep a close eye on. Remember, that individual who escaped from was a prison on, the 29th of October is still at large. The police are still searching him.
Exactly. The government couldn't give us an update on progress this morning. But we want to turn to some breaking news now this morning, because ITV is in discussions with Sky, the owner of Sky News, about selling the media and entertainment arm of its business.
Yeah. The deal will be worth £1.6 billion. I'm pleased to say, to explain what's going on here, we've got our business correspondent, Paul Kelso. Morning to you, Paul. Great to have you with us. Tell us, what is this all about?
It appears to be an opportunity by Sky, the owners of Sky News, and ultimately owned by an American cable giant broadcasting company, Comcast, to capitalise on what looks like what may be perhaps something of a bargain in ITV, the largest terrestrial free-to-air commercial broadcaster in the UK, has been having a somewhat troubled time of late. It still makes huge hits. It makes both commercially and critically acclaimed products. Mr. Bates and the Post Office, one thinks of as well as I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which draw in big numbers and they draw critical acclaim. The challenge for ITV and other commercial free-to-air broadcasters who've been making money and generating revenue in a soft advertising market. The challenges in the wider economy we talk about a lot affect all broadcasters, and particularly the challenge of the new streaming companies, relatively new, Netflix and the like, that have squeezed their business. So its share price has fallen dramatically in the last few years. Sky here, ITV says, has made an approach, a £1.6 billion approach to buy its media and entertainment business. That is not the ITV Studios business that makes some of those programmes I just mentioned. Sky has its own studios business. There's been no direct comment from Sky this morning, but Sky News does understand that discussions are ongoing. They're at an early stage. There's no guarantee or certainty there will be a deal, but there is engagement between Sky and ITV, and Sky does see an opportunity to create what it might describe as a UK commercial television champion. Sky thinks it understands British viewers particularly well, as does ITV, and there's an opportunity here, particularly in the streaming business. ITV, forgive me, has 40 million registered users of its streaming business, as well as its still really substantial audiences for its free-to-air channel. Sky itself has around 13 million subscribers for its largely subscription and paywalled offering, but it does have free-to-air offerings, not least Sky News itself. Now, no certainty as to whether a deal will be done. Clearly, this will be a big shake-up of the British television business, which still revolves largely around the publicly funded BBC at its heart. It's become harder and harder for commercial operators to compete with the streaming businesses. Sky is in the streaming business itself, so this could be a major shake-up. But any deal, if it were to try and proceed, is bound to face regulatory scrutiny. These are two of the biggest players in the British television business, so there would be a role clearly here for Ofcom. One wonders if Parliament might want to say too. Certainly MPs will have a view. Ofcom will clearly take a look at any proposed deal. ITV is listed on the stock exchange, so any updates it will have to make, and so this will be at least in part, a public negotiation.
Really interesting stuff. Paul Kelso there, thank you for that. Of course, Paul will have more on that story throughout the day, I'm sure, more on our website as well. It could be a fascinating move, and of course, we'll keep a very close eye across it for obvious reasons.
Indeed,
here.
Yeah.
Sky News.
But we're going to move on to Elon Musk now, because he's on course to get
incredible
a $1 trillion pay packet.
Say it again, $1 trillion.
I can't quite believe it, which is why I said it with my eyes wide open. This is after the board of Tesla approved the deal. There are some ambitious targets attached, though, we should say.
Yeah, there are targets attached to it. It means that Musk, who is already the world's richest man, remember, will become the world's first trillionaire. Yes, indeed. All right, now let's bring in our correspondent, Sadia Chowdhury, who was covering this for us this morning. Sadia, morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to be a trillionaire, I imagine.
It would be. I mean, it's nice to be the richest man in the world already, isn't it? And to get this, I mean, let's just really be clear first. He's not just going to be handed this pay packet. It's not like you turn up to work and you get $1 trillion. It is over the next 10 years, and there are certain benchmarks that he has to reach with Tesla. And the idea is to try and bring his focus back to the company, because I think the shareholders have realised what happens when Elon Musk gets busy in Washington with the Doge and all of that. He sort of loses focus, and we've seen Tesla not doing as well as it perhaps ought to have been doing. So here are some of the benchmarks he has to reach. He has to sell 20 million more vehicles. He has to get into this robot industry. So when he's been speaking recently, he's been talking a lot about robots, more about robots than cars. So 1 million robo-taxis and 1 million humanoid robots. By the way, none of those have been ordered yet. They're not in production. It's not like they're being sold yet. And some of these robo-taxi prototypes that he's got still have human beings inside them right now, just for safety measures. So a long way off from that. So 10 years to reach all of that, and then he can become a trillionaire.
I noticed he jumped on stage after this announcement was made and was dancing with robots on stage. I think they were chanting his name, so...
The robots or the people in the audience?
I think it was the people in the audience, but probably possibly the robots as well.
The robots to chant his name.
And I guess they're just scared of losing him, aren't they? That's why they're offering him these big incentives. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting stuff. Sadia, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's stay with the States, because Donald Trump built his political brand on economic strength, promising to make America rich again. But 1 year on from his election victory, the key word to emerge is actually affordability.
Yeah, and as the longest government shutdown in the US continues, polls are showing Trump's popularity is slipping. It's something that our US correspondent Mark Stone's been looking into. He's got a longer report that's on our website, but here's a little clip of it.
Pennsylvania, remember, was key to propelling Trump back to the White House. In this swing state, they swung to his promises. Factories reopened and life more affordable. Here, though, it really isn't. Up the road, conversations outside the town's subsidised homes. How much help do the people in this community need, do you think?
How much help?
How much help do they need?
As much as they can get. I mean, help is a four-letter word, but it has a big meaning. So help.
Do you get the sense people are needing more help now than they did a year ago?
Yes, sir. I believe they needed it then, and they need that much more now. You know, it's not hard to figure that out. The cost of living is high.
It's getting harder, and I'm a hard-working woman. You know, I don't get no food stamps. I don't, get none of that. You got to take care of them bills, or eat a little bit, or don't have the lights on. And then you have people like Mr. Melvin, who's been out here for years, serving the community.
Mr. Melvin runs the local food bank, and inside, a moment unfolds that cuts to the heart of the need here.
What's wrong? I don't know. I'm so grateful. Like, this is crazy, all this.
Oh, God. What's wrong, man?
All this situation with the government is so crazy. Like, I'm not the only one who's suffering right now. I know there's a lot of older people that don't have family. And, like, for you to do all this is a blessing.
Isaiah 6:9 says, "Unto us a child was born, and a son shall be given.
Amen.
And the government shall be upon his shoulders." Not Trump's, not the Senate, not the House of Representatives, but his shoulders.
Geraldine is the face of 40 million Americans.
God bless you. So let's get you some stuff.
Okay.
Now not receiving the full nutritional assistance program usually provided by the federal government because it remains shut down.
All right. Well, let me just bring you a little line of breaking news coming to us out of the prison service again. West Yorkshire Police have announced that 3 men have been charged with murder following the death of a man at HMP Wakefield on the 7th of November, on Friday. So earlier today, a 33-year-old called Carl Bevan was found dead in his cell on Wednesday morning. They've announced it, as I say, just this morning. Detectives have charged 3 men with murder following the death. Those 3 men are Mark Fellows, who's 45, Lee Newell, who's 56, and David Taylor, who is 63.
Yeah, so he'll keep a close eye on more statements from West Yorkshire Police, but just that initial word from them this morning saying that 3 men have been charged with murder following the death of a man, Kyle Bevan, at HMP Wakefield, which, again, another story about prisons, which is obviously makes for difficult hearing this morning. The other focus of concentration, of course, has been the mistaken release of prisoners. This is a totally separate issue, but it no doubt puts more pressure on the Justice Secretary.
It certainly does. Those 3 individuals have been remanded into custody. I mean, of course, already in prison anyway, and are due to appear before magistrates in Leeds later on this morning. We'll get the very latest on that as soon as they appear in court.
Moving on to something completely different now, and I want to warn you now, there are spoilers ahead. If you haven't had a chance to watch last night's Traitors final, go and make a cup of tea, make sure you come back, but we are going to talk about Traitors now.
I have to be here, though, even though I've
I know,
deliberately not watched it, and I'm have to nip off. Now, for the last 4 weeks, it has captivated the nation, and last night was the big finale.
Indeed. 2 traitors infiltrated the group of finalists, but they did manage to walk away with the prize money, or did they? Were they stopped at the final hurdle? I'm going to keep those questions going right to the end in case you haven't left the room. And for those of you who may not have seen the final, it does go without saying that we are going to talk spoilers because I'm very happy to say that with us now is the Traitors faithful and finalist, historian David Olusoga. A very good morning to you. And David, I know you want to talk about some Remembrance Sunday issues as well.
Right, yeah.
We'll come on to that, but we have to talk about the final because it's what everyone's talking about. I've been absolutely gripped. Gutted to say that I had to go to bed before the final last night. But how was it? How did you enjoy it? How was the whole experience for you?
Well, I think the problem was we all enjoyed it too much. We were brilliant at the tasks, and every day we went out and did what were basically bonding exercises. We just all really got to know each other, and then we were terrible at the round table because we just liked each other too much. So it was probably too much fun.
I'm told it was too nice and lovely around the round table. As I said, I haven't seen it. I was trying to save it to Christmas, but obviously...
There were a few spiky moments, I have to say.
There were a few, but for the most part it was people sort of not being very good at pointing fingers at each other.
You guys got on. I mean, I wonder if you learned anything about yourself. I've only just started watching the show. I've gone back to the first season, and it's a fantastic sort of psychological exploration of being a human being. And I wonder what you learned from being in there.
Well, I learned the limits of my approach to logic, which made a lot of sense to me, but didn't really get me very far. I think the big thing is that we rarely have a chance to step out of our normal lives. When you're young, you're constantly being thrown into new things. Life is a kind of constant series, a kind of like tightrope walks. We have to meet new people, do new things. It's very easy to get stuck in your own rut as an adult. To be plucked out of your world, to have your phone taken away from you, to be put in this entirely new environment with this amazing, surreal environment with these amazing people. It was like the sort of first week of university again. It was like starting a new school. It was wonderful.
But were you surprised at how hard it was to spot the traitors? Because they did incredibly well. I mean, we should say Jonathan Ross obviously did get discovered and uncloaked, but he lasted quite a long time. And then the other 2 right through to the final. Why is it so hard to spot when people are being devious and lying?
Well, I like what you said, that they did really well rather than we did really bad. That's my favourite.
I'm not sure I'd have framed it that way.
That's my favourite interpretation. It is a really devilishly difficult game.
Yeah.
And, obviously I was a fan of the show. I'd watched it as a viewer. And as a viewer, and you keep forgetting you've been given this piece of information and you really haven't got a clue. And the risk is that we did what we all did, perhaps me especially, is you see patterns in the clouds.
And I am going to mention the winner, but because, just look away now, Kamali, but Alan Carr, for people watching, you'd think surely you would have been onto him, and he giggled when he said, "I'm a faithful," when he was asked to say, "Are you a traitor or a faithful?" There were so many different clues that he seemed to give away to the viewer. Why did you not
Did you spot it? Did you see it?
No.
Very honest.
It was like a double bluff.
Right, of course.
It was somebody who wasn't trying to disguise that they were traitors. Therefore, it seemed logical that they weren't a traitor. There wasn't a traitor. It's I think of all the people, I think Alan probably got the fewest votes in the entire show. The other thing is Alan is he is a national treasure. He can make
super
you
likeable,
laugh.
right? Yeah.
And I think none of us really wanted to believe Alan was a traitor because he had us laughing. We were in stitches the whole time.
And I just want a quick thought. Sorry, Kamali.
I had another one as well.
I'm obviously a big fan. Well, do you want to go first?
No, you go.
I was only going to ask why you think it's been so popular. What is it about this series that really captures people's imagination?
I don't know. I think there's something about... I mean, Claudia always says the real star is the show. And it is brilliantly devised. I think the casting was absolutely fascinating. That was a group of people that really kind of gelled and worked together. And it is an astonishing team that makes this. Behind the scenes is this kind of like this engine. I'm a TV producer. I watch with awe as this incredible team made this enormous production into what it is.
Yeah, props to them, absolutely. Yes or no answers on this. Could you have been a traitor?
I would have been terrible at it. I mean, I wasn't very good as a faithful, so I think I would have been...
Did you have to be convinced to go in, or as soon as the call came in and be like, yeah, I'm going to do this?
Well, I've been asked to do a lot of different shows, and I've always said no to all of them. But, you know, even before doing it, my view was Traitors is special.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
I will ask you about your special project ahead. It's Remembrance Sunday this weekend.
Right, yeah.
Tell us about what you're doing. You've got an in memoriam site, haven't you?
Well, it's the work that I've been doing with Find My Past. We've been looking at the photographs that were printed in newspapers in the First World War. I'm afraid, so many casualties of the First World War. Local newspapers would print images of local men who died. Using AI and machine learning, we've extracted those from the newspapers, which means you could go online, and it's free from the 7th to the 13th of November, and you can be face-to-face within a few clicks of a relative who died in the First World War, someone you might not have known about. So if you go to findmypast.co.uk/remembrance, you can see those images. And, you know, we made a promise as a country that we would never forget them.
Yeah. And
we're using new technology and using the power of the internet to make that not just a national promise, but a kind of part of family history. 45%, this is the stat that amazes me, 45% of soldiers who died in the First World War died so young they didn't have children, which means they haven't got these great-grandchildren to look them up, but they do have other family members. And they've been lost, and we have a chance now, through Find My Past, to rediscover them.
And the tech has got us there. David, you're a deep thinker about the way that the past informs where we are now. How important is it to have that kind of reflection on that period? Because, as you say, these people didn't have families, and also, sadly, there are many people who just don't pay attention to that history that's all of us.
But I think what's happening, and Find My Past has been at the centre of this, is that history is now genealogy. It's now family history. There's a huge desire. It's a massive, massive industry going online and finding your ancestors. Now, it used to involve going to an archive. It was a difficult thing to do. It's now on your computer in front of you, and millions of people are engaged in building their family trees. And those ancestors who fought and died in those wars, they have a special place in those stories.
Absolutely. All right, David, also, thank you so much for coming in. Sorry we spoke so much about traitors. I hope to have you on again. We'll talk about some other stuff as well.
Lovely to see you both.
Morning to you, David. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Could you be a traitor?
I think I'd be really bad at it.
I think I'd have to be a faithful. I don't think I could do all that lying for 12 days, absolutely. All right, well, stay with us here on Mornings, because coming up next, I'm going to speak to the Conservatives' Shadow Energy Minister, Claire Coutinho.
That's coming up. Stay with us.
Hello there and welcome back to Mornings with Jones and Melbourne, our top stories. Now, a serving prison governor has told Sky News that the public is being put at risk because more people are being sent to minimal security prisons, known as open prisons. Mark Drury has said there has been a sudden increase in the number of inmates managing to escape from the facilities or failing to return to them when they go out on day release.
The Justice Secretary David Lammy is facing more questions over the release of a convicted sex offender. Police are still urgently searching for the Algerian national who was released in error from Wandsworth Prison last week.
And the boss of Tesla, Elon Musk, is set to land a $1 trillion payday if he meets a few provisos. 75% of shareholders approved the pay package, but only if he delivers 20 million new vehicle sales and 1 million AI-powered robots over the next decade. Now, it's been an awkward few days for the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, whose answers about prisoners being released by mistake has prompted more questions. Kamali, the leader of the Conservatives, called his performance at the dispatch box embarrassing, but as you can see, we're joined now by the Shadow Energy Secretary, Claire Coutinho. Morning to you. We're going to, of course, talk a little bit about your brief, but I think we should start on prisons because it has been the story of the week. And I wonder if we can start with just some honesty. The government are making a mess of this now, but it's not just their problem, is it? This was something that happened under 14 years of a Conservative government too.
Well, look, accidental prisoner releases do happen and they're all awful. And underneath us, the average was about 60 a year. But in the 1 year that Labour have been in power, it's been 262. So something is clearly going wrong in the way that they're managing the prison system. And I think one of the things I found disappointing is that David Lammy didn't answer questions at PMQs. When he was asked to come back to make a statement, he didn't. And they're obviously trying to make a very political, partisan point. But something has gone clearly wrong. Like you say, that increase has been so high that I think what they need to do is understand what they are failing at and why, so they can get a grip on this. That's the least that the victims deserve.
Well, the charge from the government this morning is that you guys knew that this was going to happen. You knew the parlous state that the justice system was in, and that's actually one of the reasons why the election was called when it was, because you didn't want to have to deal with it over the summer. What do you say to that?
No, so if you look at some of the criticisms that they're getting, there is something that they're doing in managing the prisons at the moment, which means that more people are accidentally being released. And actually, I don't deny, I'd love to see more prison places, and that's something that we need to do as a country, but this is about managing prisoners, and something is going badly wrong. Under us, it was not this high. The average was about 60 a year. Each one of those is too many, OK, one person too many. But the 262 we're seeing now is new, and it's clearly something going wrong in their watch.
Yeah. Let's move on to another topic today. And I wonder, as one of your other briefs as Shadow Equalities Minister as well, you've seen this reporting about the Metropolitan Police this morning, described as having racism baked into its systems. Do you think the Met is institutionally racist?
Well, we've seen multiple reports on this now, whether it's racism or sexism or misogyny, and there's clearly some cultural issues at the Met, and I think it's enough reports. We need to get on with it and deal with it. And the one thing...
How do we deal with it?
Well, cultural change is something that it starts at the top. You need to make it very clear what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. There needs to be accountability when people cross the line.
Well, the top is the Commissioner, Mark Rowley, who refused to say that it's institutionally racist.
Well, I'm not sure whether institutionally racist, just calling it that is the term, but if you're seeing racism in an organisation, what you need to do is make sure people are accountable and make sure you're very clear that those kinds of comments that we're seeing are not acceptable, and that people are they face the punishment that they need to when they are making those kinds of comments.
A lot of this is around trust in the police force from minority communities. Under Kemi Badenoch, you guys want to increase stop and search. If you were back in power, you'll know that former Prime Minister Theresa May reformed that, said that it wasn't a useful policy. She said it was unfair to young black men back in 2014. What's changed since then? Why do you guys want to increase it when Theresa May said it was needed?
Knife crime has gone up. People are dying. And the truth is, I worked with the Centre for Social Justice. I actually worked with some gang leaders in the past, and It's the young black men in those communities who are at most risk from knife crime, and it's those young men that we're seeing lose their lives. Those families are losing their sons, and I think it is really important that, however uncomfortable it is, and you have to recognise the challenges that Stop and Search brings for people, and it makes them feel like they're targeted, but it's more important to save lives.
So you're not worried about the targeting, because that's the concern, isn't it? That young black men in certain communities feel targeted, and it reduces trust within those communities for the police force.
And look, I understand that, and I've talked to people who have faced that as well, but the risk is that you say, because we don't want to make people uncomfortable, we don't want to do that,
Well,
that you are not picking up knives,
you know,
but you are not picking up knives which are being used to kill people.
Absolutely, but it's not uncomfortable, is it? It's about people who have nothing to do with this, perhaps being put up against a wall and asked to open their pockets because they're black and walking along the streets.
But like I said, isn't the ultimate result you want to get more of those knives off the street so you don't get these murders happening? And if you imagine, you know, the family who is losing their sons because of these crimes, I do think it's important that the police get a grip on it.
We haven't got loads of time left. I do want to talk to you about a couple of other topics, if that's all right. COPs going on in Brazil at the moment. Have the Tories just given up on trying to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere?
Well, I'm afraid what I think we're doing at the moment is completely counterproductive, because what Ed Miliband is doing is increasing the price of electricity. In January, he's about to sign up to the highest prices that we've seen in a decade for offshore wind, much higher than the current price of electricity, and he's locking those prices in for 20 years. On the other hand, if you care about decarbonisation, what you want people to do is adopt electric vehicles, adopt electric heating, all of those things. And you can't do that if you're making electricity more expensive, which is why we're launching a Cut My Bills campaign. We've got a cheap power plan which could cut people's electricity bills by 20%, whether that's for decarbonisation, whether that's for cost of living or growth. The most important thing any energy secretary should be doing right now is focusing on lowering people's bills.
Okay. And Katina, while I have you as well, the last time I saw you, you were pregnant. You've now thankfully given birth to your baby, but it was a very difficult birth. I'd like to ask how you are, how baby is, and what did you learn from that experience? It must have been entirely traumatic.
Yes, we had a tough time, but I'm really pleased to say that everybody is doing well. My son is 10 months. He is standing, very wobbly. He's got 2 teeth. He's very dribbly at the moment, but he's a complete joy.
Good. Well, I'm glad to see you, and I'm glad to hear the baby's doing well as well. Thank you very much for being with us, Claire. Thank you so much. This morning, all right, so look, as we probably expected, the Conservatives still wanting to say that this is just the current government's problem, but I think a little bit...
When we get to prisons, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, on prisons, yes, not about the baby situation. But I think a little agreement there that there's a long-standing problem with the justice system as to how many prison places there are, and what we do with prisons to try and make sure they're reformed.
That's right, and outdated methods as well has been talked about a lot as well, and modernising that. The hope is that that will help the situation at the very least. Now, we're going to talk about something else. We're going to talk about Prince Harry, because he's had to apologise to Canada.
Oh,
this is after he was seen wearing a Los Angeles Dodgers hat when he was attending Game 4 of the World Series against the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, OK, so there he is with wife Meghan wearing that Dodgers hat. The Duke of Sussex joked that he wore the cap under duress after being invited to the game by the owner of the Dodgers. I mean, if you're invited in the owner's box, then you might have to wear the cap. But Prince Harry, who has some responsibility with the Canadians, they're playing the Blue Jays, of course, in the World Series, had to make that apology a bit embarrassing.
Oh, yes, I know. And I think, didn't Meghan live in Toronto when she was filming Suits? I think that's right. But, I mean, he made a good joke about it. He kind of said, oh, when you're feeling a bit on top, you've got to take any hat you can, and I think he might have worn the Canadian hat as well, just to balance things out. I mean, probably safest just to go for a purple hat.
I think so. He said sorry.
He did say sorry.
Right. We're going to move on to something else, which is quite difficult now, so just a warning. We're going to be talking about people taking their own lives. Now, Ofcom have said that they are continuing to investigate the provider of an online suicide forum after it was revealed that despite the forum bringing in a block to restrict users from the UK accessing the service, it was still available to people in this country.
Yeah, bereaved families and survivors of the Suicide Forum have criticised Ofcom for their handling of the situation, saying they're dismayed and appalled by the regulator's decision not to pursue enforcement action under the Online Safety Act. Well, with us now is Andy Burrows, a CEO of the Molly Rose Foundation, and David Parfitt, who is Tom Parfitt's dad. And David, I do want to start with you and hear a little bit about your son, Tom. I know it's a difficult thing to talk about, so we really appreciate you coming in here to tell us about him, because he did take his own life. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
He did. So almost exactly 4 years ago, he took his own life, having unfortunately dropped out of university. He was taking a course at the University of St Andrews. Tom was a lovely man who unfortunately got himself into a spiral. And then we know he was heavily influenced by this platform that we're talking about to take his own life.
And was that during how did he become engaged with the platform? Do you understand how he was able to sort of find this space on the internet?
I think it's natural for anybody in their 20s, if they're not feeling great, to go online and look for other communities of people. And what's unfortunate is that even today, if you go online and you try and understand a little bit more about how you're feeling, maybe find other people to talk to, then you will find this site. And unfortunately, this site is the kind of place that looks like it's going to help you, but we know. There were, for instance, another 104 people in the UK who have died in the same way as Tom over the course of actually less than 2 years. We know that this site basically helps you and encourages you to take your own life.
Let's bring in Andy Burrows from the Molly Rose Foundation. Clearly, David, they're outlining some of the concerns about this forum. So talk us through what the regulator has done, because they did initially say that they were going to monitor the forum's voluntary assurances that they would geo-block the UK. Essentially, anyone in the UK wouldn't be able to access this site. They are now saying they've accepted that those blocks weren't working, essentially, and they're going to continue their investigation. So what do you make of how the regulator is handling this now?
Well, the families and survivors affected by this forum said that they were dismayed and appalled, and they are absolutely right to feel that. We let Ofcom know weeks ago that there were still UK users using this forum. We are aware of further suspected deaths in the period that this geo-block...
In the time that it's happened.
In the time that Ofcom has been investigating, this geo-block has been in force, and it appears that it has taken a letter from bereaved parents and survivors that was sent to Ofcom earlier this week to force further action.
That's incredible. I mean, you obviously speak to Ofcom. What do you make of their decision to handle it in this way? Do they just not get the internet? Is that the basic problem? They just don't understand how these things work?
Honestly, it is inexplicable, and I think many of us now feel that under the current leadership, there are really serious questions about whether Ofcom just understands the urgency of this challenge. As David said, we know that hundreds, at least 100, probably many more lives have been lost because of this forum. There is immediate threats there today. And, the legal language here is about assisting and encouraging suicide. But let's be clear about what this forum really is. It is set up for a nihilistic purpose to essentially groom people to take their own lives. So if the regulator does not see the urgency of this forum and closing it down, then, what hope can we have for all of the other online safety issues at stake?
The latest statement does say that they've accepted, that they've had these this evidence sent to them by the likes of you and the Samaritans, as I understand it. They say that they're now progressing their investigation as a priority and they aim to reach a conclusion as swiftly as they can. Do you sense that there's been a change, that they are now making this a top priority?
Well, this looks like the start of a U-turn, but, frankly, we'll believe it when we see it. Ofcom should be looking to go to court to get this forum permanently blocked in the UK. It should also be pursuing them for multiple breaches of the Online Safety Act and thinking about the fines or even criminal sanctions that they have at their disposal. So serious are the threats here.
who would those fines go to? Would that be the service providers? And I imagine that Ofcom's difficulty with all of this is that people, if it's blocked here as a UK IP address, people could use a VPN and perhaps get around it. So this is the difficulty of the internet, isn't it? It's a global system, and we have to try and find ways to block it here that people can't circumnavigate.
And so this is why, we've seen multiple breaches of the Act by this forum. So, Ofcom has a range of options available to it, levelling fines, potentially criminal sanctions. So a disincentive to the owners of this forum, who, by the way, also operate some of the largest incel forums. These are as malign actors as you could find, to try and then disrupt this site once and for all, not just to get it blocked in the UK, and also to send a really strong signal to other malign actors that we will not tolerate these types of sites.
David Parfitt, just a last thought to you. While these investigations continue and before action is taken, do you have any advice to any parents out there who are worried that their child is going through mental health problems?
Yes, absolutely. Talk to them about it. There's guidance recently published by MRF that allows you to have the right conversation with people. So don't shy away from that conversation. Spend 5 minutes reading the guidance on the MRF website and have a really strong conversation with people. It's something I certainly regret not doing with my son.
Well, David, look, you're doing the very best you can for him.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for being with him, for the courage that you're showing. Thank you.
We do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you as well, Andy, for that. Now, if you've been affected by anything that we've just been talking about, remember, you can contact the Samaritans 24 hours a day. You can call them on 116 123, or you can email joe@samaritans.org.
Now then, just to let you know that we're going to be talking about Mary Earps in a moment. Obviously, famous Lioness goalie. She's got an autobiography out, and she's been doing some interviews with our very own Jackie Beltrán.
Stay with us.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, who was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Now then, Jackie is back with more on her amazing interview with Mary Earp. So, I mean, it's so fascinating, isn't it? She's obviously known for her incredible goalkeeping for the Lionesses, but she's put out an autobiography and it's got a lot of attention, hasn't it?
Well, just so much backlash, which I found really surprising, actually, and people saying, well, it's all about Mary, it's all me, me, me. Well, yeah.
That's an autobiography.
That's an autobiography. It's her story and, the way she saw things and how things affected her, and it might not necessarily be the other side of things. For example, her relationship with Serena Wiegmann, she talks about a lot. They were very close, and then they became less close when it became obvious that she was no longer the #1 goalkeeper and was being slightly sidelined in a way, and didn't deal with that very well, and felt like the England camp didn't deal with that either. But it's her vision of what happened. I mean, as anybody would do the same. She also talks about her sexuality, which she's never talked about. She never posts pictures on her Instagram or anything, but she comes out in the book and said, my partner is Kitty, she's a massive part of my life. And she said, I found it really hard to talk about. I was quite uncomfortable talking about it, but I felt like I should if the whole story was my authentic story. And, obviously the backlash has been about Hannah Hampton, because she came out and sort of said, she was disruptive. And she also said to Serena Wiegmann, you're bringing her back, but I think you're rewarding bad behaviour. There isn't any detail of what happened on those England camps, what the bad behaviour was. I mean, they know, we don't know. But
we've not heard from Hannah Hampton either.
And we've not heard from Hannah Hampton either. And, of course, she went away to the Euros and did so fantastically well and stepped straight into Mary Earp's shoes and, did just as well. But I asked her, Mary, what it was like about sitting on the sofa, watching the Lionesses, watching her teammates, and specifically watching Hannah Hampton kind of wear her shirt and then do really well. This is what she said.
I don't see it as my shirt. I think that I wore that shirt for a period of time. I'd spent more time earning it than I did wearing it. And I think that, journeys come to an end. I think my chapter ended and hers started, and I think that, she did a great job and the team went on to win. And for me, I love seeing goalkeepers win. That's a big part of what I do. Everything that I do on and off the pitch really is about trying to make goalkeeping cool.
All athletes sacrifice a lot for their sport. Female athletes in particular quite often have to put having a family on the back burner, and you talk in the book about while the girls were at the Euros, you were actually having your eggs frozen. Tell us about what made you suddenly do that.
I've obviously put my body and mind through a lot playing this beautiful game that I love, and I think one of the fears that I've had is that maybe I wouldn't be able to have kids. I don't know. You never know until you try, and I think that knowing that I'm in my 30s now and, trying to give myself the best chance, I'd like to play the game for as long as my body will allow me, and not knowing when I'm going to want to maybe take that step to try and have a family. I wanted to give myself the best possible chance by doing that fertility treatment.
And Jackie, look, she's still playing. She's at PSG, isn't she? She's in Paris.
Yeah, and
right?
interestingly enough, PSG come to Manchester United next week to play her former club, a Champions League match. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of reception she gets. But
how did you find her when you were?
I found her really straight down the line. I've never met her before. Straight down the line, very honest. What you see is what you get. She tries to be as honest as possible in her story, but I think she's just like that in real life and very sort of to the point. And she talks about being bullied at school and having to really assert herself. And you feel like maybe, that colours the whole of your life, if you've had to really fight for stuff.
And it's so interesting her talking about some of the challenges behind the scenes, because I think we have this image, don't we, of the Lionesses being this golden group of women, amazing women that have inspired so many young girls to take up football, all those good vibes, them dancing across the table at the press conferences and just having a great time. And I guess this shows you that behind the scenes there's always going to be a bit of competition and rivalry, and there's going to be upset when people don't get picked, and there's the usual kind of stuff that happens in teams, I guess.
well, I think there is obviously rivalry because, you know, the goalkeeping shirt is what everybody wants to be number one. Everybody can't be number one. You might have 4 goalkeepers fighting for that shirt. And I think, you know, it's difficult for Mary because she had it for, not for so long, but for such a successful time, winning a Euros, World Cup final, saving a penalty, being a big face of that team, and then to suddenly be kind of pushed backwards was very, very hard to deal with. And but a lot of criticism for the timing of the book. Why has she done it now? Why hasn't she done it when she retires? But I think you have to, you know, realise that there's a short window for these girls to maybe to capitalise on their fame because it's women's football, it's still young. And loads of male players released autobiographies when they were still playing. Frank Lampard did, Ian Wright did. What I really don't see why she's suddenly public enemy number one for telling it the way she wanted to tell it.
Yeah, as an autobiography. I mean, she had one of the best nicknames as well, Mary Queen of Stops, which I think is just fantastic for a goalkeeper to have. She's going to continue playing, isn't she? I mean, is there any... Where will she be seen, do you think, going forward in terms of a lioness? Well,
I mean, a very successful lioness, and a lot of articles this week have said she's really tainted her legacy, and this is a terrible, you know, PR event. But you can't take it away from her. She fought for that shirt. She was dropped onto Phil Neville. She came back. She won the Euros. She went to a World Cup. She saved a penalty. She took on Nike and said, "Why didn't you make any replica female goalkeeper shirts?" They made them and they sold out. So she was proved right. I mean, she's a great player. She did a lot.
Nottingham, so we like her a lot. Jackie,
great interview, so and you can see more of that online. Stay with us though. Top stories are up next.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thank you for starting your day with us. This is how things are looking.
A serving prison governor tells us the public is being put at risk with more inmates being sent to minimal security prisons.
There are a large number of prisoners in open prisons now that we would not have considered suitable 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, is facing questions with the manhunt for a mistakenly released prisoner ongoing.
So breaking news this morning, ITV is in talks with Sky over selling its media and entertainment division, a deal worth £1.6 billion.
We're speaking to Alex Wu, who used to work for the animators Pixar, about his directorial debut with his new film, In Your Dreams. It looks pretty good.
And we'll be joined by the director who claims his new film proves beyond doubt that the Elgin marbles were stolen, calling it the greatest heist in art history. Hello, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us. A serving prison governor from the Prison Governors Association has told us the British public is being put at risk with more inmates being moved to minimal security prisons. Overcrowding in higher security jails has led to policy changes which mean that more prisoners are eligible for a transfer to what's called open conditions earlier on in their sentence.
Now, this will be an embarrassing admission for the government. Of course, they're currently dealing with that manhunt after a sex offender, was mistakenly released. Well, our correspondent, Molly Malone, has this story and a warning. Molly's report contains the story of a woman who was violently attacked by someone who is now being moved to one of those open prisons.
It's only by some miracle, because they can't explain how I'm alive. They literally said he hit all my major organs when he stabbed me, so I should be dead. So should my little one.
Natalie was 8 months pregnant when she was stabbed 24 times by her ex-partner. He was sentenced to 18 years for attempted murder, but is now due to be transferred to an open prison 4 years earlier than planned, as part of changes to the security categorisation of inmates.
Any day now, my ex, who created this untold horror, is about to go into an open prison. And that's at 9.5 years. And it just doesn't feel right, it's terrifying, and it doesn't also feel like justice, if I'm honest.
How does it make you feel, given what you've gone through?
Hurt, angry, let down. It's bad enough the sentence was lower than we expected. So it's like a double whammy.
Natalie is not alone, as policy changes mean more offenders are being transferred to lower security jails. Open prisons like this one in Sussex are by definition open with minimal security. Inmates are free to cross public roads. They're free to go out on day release, and traditionally prisoners would come to an open prison right at the end of their sentence in preparation for life outside. But with overcrowding in higher security jails, we're seeing more and more offenders transferred to prisons like this earlier in their sentence. And there are warnings that these policy changes are not without risk. This is a serving prison governor. He's speaking to us on behalf of the Prison Governors Association.
There are a large number of prisoners in open prisons now that we would not have considered suitable 2 or 3 years ago.
Do you feel that public safety is at risk with these changes?
It has to be. There has to be a level of public safety that's at risk when you're taking prisoners into an open prison with limited physical barriers who maybe shouldn't be there, and then who are able to walk out, who are able to leave at any point. So there has to be a increased risk for the public.
Here's an example. Look at this appeal from Sussex Police. This is Ola Abimola, a foreign national offender who was serving a 21-year sentence for kidnap and GBH. He absconded from an open prison weeks ago and hasn't returned. The police say they're working to find him.
Do you feel safe?
No, is the honest answer. When I had the news that he had been approved for open prison, It just absolutely knocked me for six.
Against the odds, both Natalie and her young child survived the attack. She says she understands the problems prisons face, but her priority is feeling safe.
Well, please say Molly joins us now live. Molly, great to have you with us. Great reporting, as always. We see at the end of your report there the impact that these open prisons can have on the victims of crime.
Yeah, there's just been so much news this week, hasn't there, in terms of prisons. People will have seen these two mistaken releases coming off the back of the other mistaken release a few weeks ago, Hadesh Kabati, the Ethiopian asylum seeker, which really brought the kind of issue to the forefront because actually it's been something that's been happening for ages. There were 262 releases in error in the last year. We now know that one man, an Algerian national, is still on the run. Police are looking for him. Another man handed himself back into Wandsworth prison yesterday. It is visually and kind of symbolically terrible for a prison service. They point out they've been under pressure and that's the result of it. But we've had these new release checks that have been brought in after Hadesh Kabati was mistakenly freed. And there's been this whole sort of back and forth about those new checks coming in on the 27th of October, this Algerian national being mistakenly released on the 29th of October. So were they properly implemented? And I think you've been talking to Steve Reed this morning about exactly that.
The Justice Secretary has caused more confusion, hasn't he, around his announcements on this issue this week. He refused to answer questions at PMQs on Wednesday. He then didn't come back to the House to clarify things when he did have more information. And his latest statement also raised questions. I want to pick into that, if I can, a little bit, because he said yesterday that the release of this Algerian sex offender happened before he introduced tough new checks on the release of prisoners. But just to go into the detail, that statement about the new checks was on the 27th of October, and this man, Kader Sharif, was released on the 29th. So did he get that wrong?
Well, you know, the dates of this, that or the other...
Well, no, it's important, because he said this release happened before he introduced the new checks.
What's important is there have been hundreds of individuals released who should not have been released because we've got a paper-based system that you can't guarantee is getting it right every time. And I'm sure everyone watching this, just like me, just like you, wants the prison system to get this right every time. I don't want anyone that should be in jail accidentally released, and we get that right by fixing the problems that led to it.
Happy with that answer, Anna?
Still plenty of questions, anyway, around, you know, the mistaken release of prisoners. But in the meantime, your report kind of focuses on a slightly different issue, doesn't it? This issue of people being moved into open prisons.
Yeah, that's right. If that's the kind of here and now, actually, I think what many governors feel is the kind of next big, in their words, sort of disaster that's potentially coming down the line is this idea that because of overcrowding in higher security jails, you're seeing lots more violent offenders be transferred to these open conditions. That means that they can apply to go out on day release. They can, as you saw in my report, sort of walk across public roads. Imagine the victims at the end of this. Natalie, in my report, stabbed 24 times by her ex-partner, extremely violent. She was carrying their 8-month unborn child, 8 months pregnant. He's set to be transferred to an open prison. Clearly, she's terrified. Now, the governor, speaking for the Prison Governors Association there, but a serving governor, pointing out that, you know, all governments, in his view, are guilty of kind of, you know, doing these changes. Governors feel that they're not being listened to, actually, and that public safety is at risk, and that actually terrible things, in his words, could happen, and then it would be too late. The horse would have bolted. The government are clear that sort of a thorough risk assessment is in place. His view is that actually, because of the pressures that they point out that they're under, it's more of an algorithm-type tick box. But we have had a statement from the government. They said the small number of offenders eligible for moves to open prison face a strict, thorough risk assessment, and anyone found breaching the rules can be immediately returned to a closed prison. We are keeping the most dangerous offenders off the streets by expanding prison capacity with 14,000 new places by 2031 and introducing sentencing reforms to force prisoners to earn their way to release or face longer in jail for bad behaviour. But I think the public might look at that statement and hear 2031, see what they've seen this week and be pretty concerned.
Look, Molly, in your report, you reveal a woman who was stabbed 24 times by an ex-partner while she was pregnant. That individual, that man, is now going to be sent to an open prison. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that we're in a crisis in the system, I don't know what it is, because that individual should not be anywhere near somewhere you would have thought that allows him some kind of liberty.
Well, that's certainly her view, and you can imagine she has 3 children. She's feeling, scared for her own safety. And the government, while they won't explicitly say this, well, it is because of overcrowding in higher security jails. They feel they're faced with no option.
OK. Molly, appreciate the reporting, as always. You're keeping across the prison estate.
Always.
So much for that, Molly. Really
Your
good,
speciality,
really good reporting.
Molly, thanks very much indeed. And as we say, I think we're going to hear a lot more about this. Heat on the Justice Secretary over some of these mistakes with these prisoners being released, and now pressure coming from other quarters, as we were hearing.
It's the question you put to Steve Reed, right? Like, the timeline doesn't seem to quite stack up as to when these new measures were put in place, when these individuals were released by mistake. And remember, this individual released on the 29th of October is still at large. I mean, what's it now, 8, 9 days? It's going on, isn't it? And they haven't been able to track him down.
Yeah, so questions over how effective those checks are, those new stringent checks. So lots more questions. We'll no doubt be covering this again in the next few days. But in the meantime, let's move on to a story from this morning, breaking news this morning. ITV is in discussions with Sky, the owner of Sky News, we understand, about selling the media and entertainment arm of its business.
Yeah, the deal would be worth an estimated £1.6 billion. Now, Sky, which of course is owned by the American media giant Comcast, have declined to comment on this move. But I guess if the move were to go ahead, we're no clearer as to exactly the detail of all of this. It would be another case of consolidation within the media industry as we move into a whole new world of streaming and online broadcast rather than traditional television.
That's right. I mean, as you say, not a huge amount of information, but Sky News understands the approach centres on the potential creation of a UK-focused streaming giant. I'm reading that from our own online copy, so you can check it out yourself for more details.
As you can imagine, we're going to keep a very close eye on that story here. All right, let's go to the States now.
Let's do it.
Donald Trump, who of course has built his brand on economic strength and promising to make America rich again, but a year on from winning the key to the White House, the key words to emerge is affordability. Yeah, as the longest government shutdown rumbles on, polls show Trump's popularity is slipping, and it's something that Mark Stone has been investigating for us. So let's take a listen of a short clip from his report.
Pennsylvania, remember, was key to propelling Trump back to the White House. In this swing state, they swung to his promises. Factories reopened and life more affordable. Here, though, it really isn't. Up the road, conversations outside the town's subsidised homes. How much help do the people in this community need, do you think?
How much help?
How much help do they need?
As much as they can get. I mean, help is a four-letter word, but it has a big meaning. So help.
Do you get the sense people are needing more help now than they did a year ago?
Yes, sir. I believe they needed it then, and they need that much more now. You know, it's not hard to figure that out. The cost of living is high.
It's getting harder, and I'm a hard-working woman. You know, I don't get no food stamps. I don't, get none of that. You got to take care of them bills, or eat a little bit, or don't have the lights on. And then you have people like Mr. Melvin, who's been out here for years, serving the community.
Mr. Melvin runs the local food bank, and inside, a moment unfolds that cuts to the heart of the need here.
What's wrong?
I don't know. I'm so grateful. Like, this is crazy, all this.
Oh, God. What's wrong, man?
All this situation with the government is so crazy. Like, I'm not the only one who's suffering right now. I know there's a lot of older people that don't have family. And, like, for you to do all this is a blessing.
Isaiah 6:9 says, "Unto us a child was born, and a son shall be given.
Amen.
And the government shall be upon his shoulders." Not Trump's, not the Senate, not the House of Representatives, but his shoulders.
Geraldine is the face of 40 million Americans.
God bless you. So let's get you some stuff.
Okay.
Now not receiving the full nutritional assistance program usually provided by the federal government because it remains shut down.
Well, let's stay in the States because Elon Musk is in the news because he's on course for a $1 trillion pay packet. It's certainly a lot of money. After the board of Tesla approved the deal, there are some ambitious targets attached, we should say.
I hope so. It means that Musk, who's already the world's richest man, could soon become the world's first trillionaire. Our correspondent Sadia Chaudhry is following this for us. I mean, a load of money.
It's an obscene amount of money. I mean, what does $1 trillion even look like?
Sure how many zeros that is? I mean, can someone tell me?
12.
12
zeros.
Brilliant.
And already over the internet, there's lots of suggestions on what he could spend the money on. My favourite is that he could buy Coca-Cola for $300 billion and still have enough money to buy a 12-pack of Coca-Cola for every single person on this planet. That's
Other
how
brown
much
fizzy
money.
drinks are, of course, available.
That's someone with a calculator and a lot of time on their hands. They'll work that out.
But there's loads of theories out there on the internet on all the money that, all the different things that he could spend that money on. He's 54 years old, which means in the 10 years that it will take him to earn this money, he'll end up being 64, which gives him, if he lives until about 100, about 36 years to spend $1 trillion. But look, like I said, it's not a given. He's not going to just rock up to work tomorrow and have $1 trillion. He has to work for it, and that they've given him a really steep, long list of things that he needs to achieve, including selling 20 million more vehicles, selling 1 million robots, 1 million humanoid robots, 1 million robo-taxis. And those last few items, the robots, that's something he's really very much focused on, but there are currently no orders for this yet. So, you know, there are lots of prototypes being created, but in these robo-taxis, there's still humans inside them for safety. So we're not anywhere near seeing those kind of numbers being sold. It is a difficult position for Tesla, but I think what's evident is that the shareholders are all very united, that they want him to focus on this company.
And they want him to stay. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? They're trying this time, keep him interested, give him a challenge, and make sure that his attention doesn't stray elsewhere.
Exactly, because he has taken his attention off to Washington, he's been involved in Doge and all of this, and this is a real sign that they want to lock him into Tesla now for the next 10 years. I think there are some estimates that it will take at least 7 years to achieve some of those targets. So he's not becoming a trillionaire anytime
Not
too
just
soon.
yet. I mean, looking at the share price, it is up on early trading. It's $456 a share, which is a significant amount. The company's worth so much. So much money. And this idea of him selling 20 million cars, well, I imagine him in a showroom out there actually trying to make the sales.
I can't imagine 20 million cars as much as I can't imagine 1 million or a trillion.
Yes. And our producer has just told us
I'm glad you wrote this down, because you said it in my ear and I didn't have a chance to write it down.
That if you have 1 trillion $1 bills piled on top of each other, you get a quarter of the way to the moon.
Which is where Elon Musk wants to get to.
Yes!
So there you go.
Maybe if you climb to the top of them, a little bit closer.
And use one of those rockets as the share price goes up again. All right, Sadia, thank you so much for that. Now, we're going to speak about the situation in Mexico. There's been an extraordinary bit of video that has been posted showing the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, being sexually assaulted on the streets of that country. We're going to speak to Jamie Klinger, who's the co-founder of a group called Reclaim These Streets.
That's right, an extraordinary story. We'll get her views on it just after the break.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. Now, the President of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, has pressed charges against a man who groped her on the street.
Yeah, she's described the incident as an assault on all women while calling on states to make it easier for victims to report assaults. Well, I'm joined now by the activist and co-founder of Reclaim These Streets, Jamie Klinger. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming in. And the pictures are extraordinary. We've chosen not to show them because they're very graphic. Yeah. It's actually an assault that appears to be taking place there. So what do you make of the pictures, first of all, if you've seen them online?
I wish I was more shocked by it, but you can see all kinds of newscasters every time a woman is publicly broadcasting. You see broadcasters get groped, you see things get yelled at them, you see people behind them making rude and sexually motivated gestures. I think this brings it to the forefront because it's the president, but I also think it's really brave of her that she's not changing her public persona and still going to be out there in the middle of the crowds, because that is how she's gotten elected and that is how she's talked to people. And I think it says a lot to tell other women to come forward and have their experiences heard and should be prosecuted.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's pressing charges, of course. And when she came to power, the first female president of Mexico, it was seen as a real shift, not only in the politics, but in the culture of Mexico as well. It's a very patriarchal society. And what we see here with this individual is that, I mean, things haven't moved on. Maybe I'm naive to think that they could even...
But they haven't moved on here either. And I think we keep saying, like, oh, Mexico is really machismo. But I've done interviews talking about after Sarah Everard was killed and somebody rolls by screaming something out of a car of sexual nature to me. And every time you're on TV, I know that presenters get all kinds of mail and presents, and you get rude messages and you get graphic messages. And we've grown to accept it. And it is the cost of being a woman in the public eye, and it's unacceptable.
But how much more powerful is it when the president comes out and says, I will press charges? When she came to office, she said, I want to get elected for the sake of all women. And now her taking this forward legally, she's saying once again, if this can be done to the president, what's happening to everybody else? I mean, how powerful a message do you think that is?
I think it's really powerful. I wish that people weren't just acting like it was isolated, because in every country, and if we look at the rape prosecution rate here is 1.7%. Like, you need graphic videos, you need absolute proof to have anyone listen to you, and that's what really needs to change, is we need to believe women.
Yeah. I mean, in the reporting as well, I actually skipped over in the script, so I didn't want to say the words, that this man was drunk. There's no excuse at all, but we are reporting that, and it feels as if...
It's an excuse.
Right.
And yeah, the mitigating circumstances, no. It's about boundaries, and it's about you have no right to put hands on her. And the audacity that you're going to do it to the president on camera, and it's the right and the ability to say this is not acceptable. And it's for little girls in school to see that people aren't allowed to touch them, and that there's consent, and that there's rules about whether or not you can put your hands on somebody.
You talked about the UK having challenges and not a great record itself as far as justice is concerned for women that get assaulted. But talk to us a little bit about Mexico's record. How bad is it?
So the femicide prosecution rate for women being killed is only 2%, that anybody pays any crime or any accountability for killing women, which is absurd. And I think having a woman in charge saying this early in her presidency, I hope to see the real seed change there, and that it is a watershed moment that people stand up and take notice, because women's lives matter, and this is not a thing where that it's walking up to the president and not expecting to get arrested. I know that we're not making excuses. But like, what did you think was going to happen? It's so gross.
It speaks to something societal, doesn't it, that says that this individual thought he could do this in Mexico.
Yeah, and that we see it. We see it happen with people behind crowds. We see, especially women reporting on sports, we see people coming up behind them and touching them, and it's just, it's got to stop. And that's one of the things about social distancing that I was like, just give every woman that much space. Keep your hands to yourself and let us get on with running, let us get on with our lives, and let us get on with living without the fear of men groping and touching us.
Certainly very brave of her to say that you're going to carry on being in the streets and wants to meet people like that. It's a brave move, isn't it? Well, Jamie Klingler, thanks very much indeed for coming in. We do appreciate it and giving us your views.
All right.
This is a story that
I picked it out this morning because I thought it's hilarious. Let me take you through this. So you'll remember when the Louvre, there was a high-value heist of loads of the French crown jewels stolen early on a Sunday morning as tourists were waiting outside to get in. Now, 4 people have been apprehended and are in custody for this heist. I was on that morning.
Yeah, it's a really serious crime,
It was
isn't
extraordinary. And there are also, of course, questions now about the security in the Louvre. Well, it's emerged that the Louvre's security camera's password is... Can you guess what it is, Anna?
Well, I know what it is.
It's Louvre. L-O-U-V-E. Could you believe it? I mean, password is password. If the security...
I'm imagining they've changed it now.
You would hope so.
Especially now you've told everyone.
Or maybe Louvre at 1. Just add another element to it. It's extraordinary.
Un, deux, trois.
No, right, exactly.
There
you go. So look, they've probably changed, as Anna says. So let's hope that those crown jewels are recovered. I don't think they have been yet, have they?
I don't think they have. No, I think that's right.
Speaking of priceless artefacts, we're going to speak to a classical archaeologist about the Parthenon sculptures, otherwise known as the Elgin marbles, and whether or not they should be sent back to Greece.
That's right. There's a new film, The Marbles. He's going to be reacting to it after this break. Let's update you on the news this morning. And a serving prison governor has told Sky News the public is being put at risk because more inmates are being sent to minimal security prisons. Mark Drury says there's been a sudden increase in the number of inmates managing to escape from open prisons or fail to return when they go out on day release.
Well, the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, is facing more questions about the mistaken release of a convicted sex offender on the 29th of October. Police are still desperately searching for the Algerian national who was released from Wandsworth, as I say, at the end of October.
ITV is in discussions with Sky, the owner of Sky News, about selling the media and entertainment arm of its business. Any potential sale would not include the company's studios arm, which produces shows such as I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. The deal would be worth £1.6 billion.
Now, a new film about the Parthenon sculptures, which are also, of course, known as the Elgin Marbles, calls their journey to Britain the greatest heist in art history. The film is called The Marbles. Brian Cox, the actor, is in it as the historian, Dr. Dominic Selwood.
I've started making a documentary about why I think the Parthenon marbles should be repatriated to Greece.
If you call them the Elgin marbles, it implies that they belong to Elgin, but they never did.
The Parthenon marbles are in this place on a myth.
I think it is pretty clear that Elgin stole marbles.
The British state claims ownership.
Well, the director of The Marbles, David Wilkinson, spoke to Sky News ahead of the film hitting selected UK cinemas.
Lord Elgin did sell them, and the British Museum did buy them from him. But the question comes, did Lord Elgin actually have the right to purchase them? And did he actually do this? Now, last year, a lady called Zeynep Boz, on behalf of the Turkish government, actually said once and for all, Lord Elgin did not purchase them from the Ottoman Empire. There is no record at all.
Historians I've spoken to on the other side will argue and say, well, there was no firman because after the revolution, the Greeks burnt the Vovo, which is the archives, essentially, and that's why we don't have record.
Yes, but that's nonsense because that's, and somebody does argue this, Dominic Selwood argues this in the film, I put both sides. But the trouble is why are there copies of absolutely everything else in Istanbul? And it was normal practice at the time that a copy would be kept in what was then Constantinople, and another copy would have been sent off to Athens. Why is there no record? Why is there nothing there?
Arguably, possibly one of the most famous people in the country, or Greek descendants in this country, would be King Charles. Do you think he should be more vocal in his support for the return or the reunification of the Parthenon sculptures?
My personal view is he probably does want them to go back. You know, he is the son of Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, after all. But I think he's being very wise. We don't need the Parthenon marbles. They're somebody else's culture. They mean a great deal to the people of Greece, and they don't mean very much to the people of the UK.
Well, let's speak now to the archaeologist, Dr. Matteo Tornabuco della Torretta. Doctor, thank you very much for being with us this morning. You've heard from the director of the movie. I know you've seen the picture, but just first on the principle, should the Parthenon sculptures be returned to Greece?
No, I don't think they should, and I've been very vocal about this. It's all about the claim that is a bogus claim because it's unsubstantiated. It's 200 years that we hear the myth of the stolen Parthenon sculptures, and nobody has ever been able to prove that there was ever a theft. And I think that the problem with this movie is exactly that the director is convinced that repeating the tale of the stolen marbles long enough will make it true, which is not the case.
But the marbles, we're seeing them, pictures of them being displayed there in the British Museum, which has brought a lot of joy to people visiting them in this country. But people in Greece might say they were absolutely integral to the Parthenon. They were created to decorate the temple. They're a huge part of the country's cultural and historical heritage. And they would say, isn't it time to send them back?
It's true that it's part of the Parthenon, and it's true that the Parthenon is a very symbolic building of Greek culture, but also Western culture. The problem is that ancient artifacts actually move around quite a lot. We have Egyptian obelisks in Rome. We have the Rosetta Stone in the British Museum. We have the Hammurabi Code in the Louvre. It's normal for historical objects to be taken from one place and be put in another place. And this is also part of their story. It's the story that we should be telling. It's the story that we need to explain to the people why these movements happened, what fueled them, and what cultural consequences they had when they happened.
Doctor, you described sort of an exchange of artefacts between countries, but that's not what happened here, is it? Lord Elgin went to Athens and he managed to get them off the Parthenon and bring them back here for profit. It was a theft.
He first of all asked for permission to the only legitimate and internationally recognized sovereign authority on Athens in 1801, which was the Ottoman Empire. We should not forget that Athens was an integral part of the Ottoman Empire. It's like Leeds is a part of the UK. They didn't have administrative authority to say no to that or to even form an opinion about that. And they didn't have the knowledge to form a particular opinion one way or another on this. So he was authorized, he brought them in a condition where they were being actually actively dismantled. And we have proof, even in the British Museum, if you go in there, you will find places in the frieze where the sculptures have been chiseled off. And we have plaster casts of what they looked like just 10 years before Elgin took them away. So we know this was happening. There was an active threat, and Lord Elgin acted to the best of his abilities in order to save them.
OK. Doctor, I wonder if I can get you on the principle of things moving around. You talked about this sort of exchange of artefacts. The Benin bronzes came to this country from Benin during colonialism. They have been returned. Was that the right thing to do? Is it specific about the Parthenon sculptures here that you think that they shouldn't go back?
For every repatriation claim, I think that what we really need to think about is, first of all, were they acquired legitimately during according to the morals and the law of the day. And in the case of the Parthenon marbles, this is unimpeachable. There is no way you can prove there was any wrongdoing being done. In the case of the Benin bronzes, they were, it was a legal operation because there was an active war scene, and looting was something that was approved. It was outlawed only a few years later. We think that is objectionable, but it was still legal. Then what you have to do is, once you ascertain the conditions of their removal, then you have to say, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we thinking about returning them? Is it just to satisfy a passing fashion, like a woke claim, or is it something more profound? Is it something that satisfies and enhances the cultural value of that particular object? When we are talking about repatriation done only for ethno-nationalistic reasons, then I don't think this is in accordance with the cultural value of the object.
Just finally and quickly, if you can, Doctor, there was some talk about having sort of replicas exchanged, sending back the originals to Greece and having replicas here so people could enjoy seeing them at the museum. Isn't that just the best sort of compromise on this?
The argument for the replicas works both ways. If they are good enough for us, they are good enough for them as well.
Brilliant answer. Doctor, thank you so much for that. As we saw from the director, there is a disagreement about this story, but Doctor, we appreciate you coming on and making your argument. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a debate that's endured decades and centuries. Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it does seem to be perhaps a bit of a shift at the British Museum themselves. They've talked about potentially being open to some kind of compromise in the future.
George Osborne was running it, right, and he talked about this. The final point I put to the Doctor there about these replicas being used, and the Doctor very elegantly switched it around and said we could send the replicas to Greece. I don't think Athens would be very happy.
Yeah, some talk about perhaps a sort of a temporary lending, and I don't think Greece was too happy about that either.
No, not at all.
Permanent or no deal, I think was the thought. Indeed. Right. Now then, if you could turn one of your dreams into reality, what would it be?
Not that one when I'm falling and I can't stop myself from falling.
That's not a good one.
Terrible,
no, you don't want that
terrible dream.
Well, it's basically the plot of a new Netflix film called In Your Dreams, the animated feature directorial debut from Pixar legend Alex Wu.
What is that? The Legend of the Sandman, the Giver of Dreams? The Sandman can make your dreams come true! It's magic! I can see your crack, Houdini.
Well, Alex was the story lead at Pixar Animation Studios, which brought classics like Ratatouille, WALL-E, and...
I'll hold it. Who's this guy?
Listening to me.
No, sorry.
And Finding Dory.
Classic movies, yes.
Ratatouille, we have got an important friend with us on set.
I think we should find out exactly who this is before we talk about the movie.
Yeah, this is Baloney Tony. He's one of the stars of In Your Dreams.
Excellent.
He is a stuffed giraffe that's stuffed with bologna.
And I've seen the trailer. He tosses
Yeah, he farts lasers too.
Amazing. Quite the toy. I hope he doesn't do any of that to me. Look, Alex, how much of this movie, because it still touched on some really powerful themes, it feels a little autobiographical because a part of your story as well is related to this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very personal film. It's obviously about the world of dreams, which is really spectacular and fantastic, but it's also a very intimate personal story. So when I was a kid, my parents nearly split up. And so this movie is very much about my sort of navigating that sort of challenging truth that families aren't perfect, that people aren't perfect, that life isn't perfect, but you still have to find a way through. And so, yeah, the movie is sort of thematically about what do you do when your dreams don't come true? How do you move forward? How do you find a way through in life?
And is that what gave you the idea, that feeling that, not all children have an easy time sometimes, and how do you navigate that? Was it a way of kind of trying to communicate with kids and give them hope?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I was a kid, I grew up with movies that told me that if I wanted something badly enough, if I worked hard enough, I could make my dreams come true.
You'll get it, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
your dreams will come true, which sometimes is true in life, which is great. I mean, I have my own first, animated feature that's a dream come true.
Very successful, Alex.
But a lot of times, most of my life is not like that. Most of my life is just sort of normal, and things don't always go the way that I want them to. And so I wanted to make a film that spoke to that part of life, but also give children and families hope to carry on. And
talk to us about the power of animation to have these sort of themes within the picture, right? Because like a movie itself with such a challenging theme might find it difficult to then make that left turn into the humour, and there's obviously a lot of humour with Baloney Tony in your film.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about the medium of animation. It's not just that visually you can accomplish anything. Tonally, you're able to navigate certain emotions that you really couldn't do in live action. So this film balances a lot of heart, but a lot of humor, a lot of challenging themes. But a lot of like surreal, cartoonish comedy. And so finding that balance is really difficult in a live action movie. But in animation, people expect that. It's just got so much sort of flexibility and versatility as a medium.
And obviously you've got an extraordinary track record at Pixar behind you, but this is your directorial debut, isn't it? And it's been quite a long journey, hasn't it? I mean, was the first steps you took were about a decade ago, I think.
Yeah, so I worked at Pixar for 10 years, and I worked on films like Ratatouille and WALL-E, and I got to work with these incredible filmmakers. But then at one point, I wanted to kind of spread my wings and fly, so I tapped two of my friends on the shoulders, and we left Pixar. We started our own studio called Cuckoo Studios. And we started pitching original ideas to all these different studios in Hollywood. And our first show was a show called Go Go Corey Carson that was pitched to Netflix. We ended up making it. We won 3 Emmys. We got nominated for 8. And then Netflix was so happy with what we did, they said, what else do you guys have? And we pitched them this movie about the world of dreams. And,
that is a dream.
That is a dream. That is a
really
dream.
Nice.
Yeah, and so it's been 9 years, a 9-year journey. We came up with the idea at the beginning of 2017, and it's coming out now on November 14th on Netflix globally. So that's a 9-year journey. So, you know, human babies take 9 months. Animated movie babies take 9 years to make.
It's well worth it, judging by the trailer. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to you guys seeing it.
Yeah.
It's actually playing theatrically in London in 10 theaters, starting today through the 13th.
Okay.
So yeah, if you guys want to see it on the big screen.
We know where to go.
Claim
Lovely to meet
Bologna
you.
Tony as well for my 5-year-old son, if that's
Oh yes, that's for
Jude,
you.
this is yours. All right. Thank you, Alex.
For it. I don't know. We'll see. Alex Wu, thanks very much indeed. I'm not sure if my 25-year-old will be that bothered.
I don't think your 25-year-old Jude
might like it.
All right.
Now then, we've got lots coming up for you. Traitors, Faithful and Finalists.
Don't tell me who won it.
Really need to watch that final. Actually, you need to watch the whole series. It's the historian David Olusoga who has been sharing the signs he missed during last night's finale.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we are to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, who was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the On-Board Lounge. flying fly better.
Thank you.
Now, before we proceed any further, we should say spoilers ahead.
God, do I have to cover my ears and close my eyes?
You
I don't want to find out what happened with the traitors.
The traitors.
Yeah.
It's a show that has gripped the nation, and the final, as we know, aired last night. It was a big one, but neither of us got to see it.
No, I deliberately didn't watch it, and we obviously had to go to sleep so we could get up early enough for this show. Now, 2 traitors infiltrated that group of finalists, and in the last hour we spoke to one of the finalists who was a faithful, the historian, Professor David Olusoga, who admitted that he missed all the signs when it came to one of the traitors.
Why is it so hard to spot when people are being devious and lying?
Well, I like what you said, that they did really well rather than we did really bad. That's my
I was being
favourite.
hard. You're in
I'm
the
not sure what I framed it that way.
That's my favourite interpretation. It is a really devilishly difficult game.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously I was a fan of the show. I'd watched it as a viewer. And as a viewer, you know. And you keep forgetting you've been given this piece of information and you really haven't got a clue. And the risk is that we did what we all did, perhaps me especially, is you see patterns in the clouds.
Mm. And I am going to mention the winner, but because, I mean, just look away now, Kamali, but Alan Carr, I mean, for people watching, you'd think surely you would have been on to him, and he giggled when he said, I'm a faithful, when he was asked to say, are you a traitor or a faithful. There were so many different clues that he seemed to give away to the viewer. Why did you not
Did
pick
you
up on
spot it? Did you see it?
No.
Very honestly.
It was like a double bluff.
Right, of course.
It was somebody who wasn't trying to disguise that they were traitors. Therefore, it seemed logical that they weren't a traitor. There wasn't a traitor. It's I think of all the people, I think Alan probably got the fewest votes in the entire show. The other thing is Alan is just he is a national treasure. He can make
super
you
likeable,
laugh
right?
so
Yeah.
much. And I think none of us really wanted to believe Alan was a traitor because he had us laughing. We were in stitches the whole time.
Oh, so great to have him in.
It was. He could not have been a traitor, he says. He said he wasn't a very good faithful either. Now, would you have been, if you could?
I
Jackie's
don't know.
in this
I always think that I'm quite good at lying, but everyone always rumbles me, so I think I'd probably be rubbish.
Austin, what about you? Do you think you could do it?
Yeah, I think I could do it.
Of course, I knew you would say that as well.
Why did you think
I knew you would say it because you got this.
I just think it seems like the fun bit to be.
To be the liar.
You're more in control, aren't you?
Well, you do the murdering, don't you? I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. Anyway.
So Mary Earps, extraordinary goalkeeper for the Lionesses for so long, and who inspired so many young kids to get the goalkeeper's jersey on.
Yeah, and it actually took on Nike because they didn't actually make
Yes,
the
exactly.
Which people are now coming back on my social media saying, oh, that was just Mary being all about Mary. I thought, oh, that was just about fair play for female goalkeepers.
How interesting.
And you know, still so much negative publicity around her book, which came out last week, and what she said about Hannah Hampton in the book and about the England training camp and how she felt sort of sidelined and a bit cold-shouldered, having done so much with the team and achieved so much with the team, and then to go back into it and go, oh, I'm not, you know, I'm not number one anymore. And there must be an element of she didn't like it, of course, but I don't think writing the book was just about that. It was to explain why she quit so suddenly when she quit. But I asked her about Hannah. When you watched her and watched her do so well, were you a tiny bit sad?
I don't see it as my shirt. I think that I wore that shirt for a period of time. I'd spent more time earning it than I did wearing it. And I think that, you know, journeys come to an end. I think my chapter ended and hers started, and I think that, you know, she did a great job and the team went on to win. And for me, I love seeing goalkeepers win. That's a big part of what I do. Everything that I do on and off the pitch really is about trying to make goalkeeping cool.
All athletes sacrifice a lot for their sport. Female athletes in particular quite often have to put having a family on the back burner. Right. And you know, you talk in the book about while the girls were at the Euros, you were actually having your eggs frozen. Tell us about what made you suddenly do that.
I've obviously put my body and mind through a lot playing this beautiful game that I love, and I think one of the fears that I've had is that maybe I wouldn't be able to have kids. I don't know. You never know until you try, and I think that, knowing that I'm in my 30s now and, yeah, trying to give myself the best chance. I'd like to play the game for as long as my body will allow me, and not knowing when I'm going to want to maybe take that step to try and have a family. Yeah, I wanted to give myself the best possible chance by doing that fertility treatment.
Great that we're able to hear from her. It's a shame about the backlash that she's had. This is her story and how she sees it.
I've got no skin in the game. I just met her for the first time when I did that interview. And I mean, Hannah Hampton did a great job. She did a great job. Let's just kind of leave it at that and let her tell her story.
Right, well, to the men's team.
Speaking of the story today, which will happen at 10 o'clock after the show, Thomas Tuchel will announce his England side. And it's, it's up for discussion. Does he bring back some people that he's left out? So like Jude Bellingham, left out the last squad. Jude wanted to play. He said, no, you're coming back from injury. You're kind of ring rusty. He didn't say that, but words to that effect. Yeah. But he scored 3 goals in 4 games, including against Barcelona. So he's very much a man in form. So it's widely expected that Jude Bellingham will be back in. Phil Foden, will the Man City player, also in great form, will he be back in? No one's quite certain about that, but he scored 2 great goals in the week in the Champions League. Danny Welbeck scored 6 goals for Brighton. All his teammates at Brighton think he should be in it.
He's playing
That's probably less likely. But Serbia and Albania next week. He's got to name it today. His press conference is at 11. We'll find out at 10.
We will, and see who is in that squad.
Have you got any particular wishes?
I mean, I think it'd be great to see Jude Bellingham back in the team, but I think Thomas Tuchel said that the squad's playing well, the team are playing well, and you don't want to disrupt the flow that you've got. It talks about,
It's
choices by the boss.
Interesting call.
Hate to disrupt the flow here, guys, but we're kind of out of time, and it's at the end of the show. But we'll be back again tomorrow morning, and Sam Washington's up next.
Thanks for being with us.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.